Good morning, honourable members. Do we have a meeting agenda? Things are falling apart towards the end of the term now. Mr. Mthalini, do we have an agenda for the meeting? Is it on the phone? Okay. There's a notice there, yeah. Great. Okay. Honourable members, good morning. Thank you very much for attending the Select Committee on Public Infrastructure administered in the Presidency. Today we are dealing with a briefing from the Public Service Commission on assessments undertaken in respect of the implementation of the Accommodation Programme under the Government Immovable Asset Management Act, GIAMA, with a focus on implementing gaps and recommendations for legislative reforms. I'd like to just ask Mr. Mthalini if there are any apologies or correspondence received. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson, and good morning, honourable members and colleagues from PSC. The apologies that we have received, Chairperson, we have received 2 apologies so far from Honourable Priet. She's attending SC on Education, and Honourable Mabebo, it's on study leave. And also we have received a correspondence from the Minister Ramkhopa of the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, that they won't be part of this meeting today. They are requesting that we meet them on the other date.
Ministers, the Department's response, Public Works, have they anything from them?
No, Public Works were not, actually they were not invited in this meeting, yes.
Great, thank you very much. Honourable members, let us quickly just do introductions of the committee members. My name is Rikus Baardnorst. I'm a Western Cape Permanent Delegate, and starting from my right, Honourable Teza, you can go.
Thank you very much, Chair. Greetings to the members, yourself, and colleagues. My name is Khanya Teza. I'm a permanent delegate from Mpumalanga province. Thank you very much.
Greeting members and officials of the department. I'm Mandisa Makesini, the permanent delegate from Free State. Thank you.
Mornings, members. My name is Mandla Peter. I'm a permanent delegate from Eastern Cape. Thank you.
Morning, Chair, honourable members, officials. My name is Regina Molokomi. I'm a permanent delegate from Limpopo province and also the whip of this committee. Thank you, Chair.
Morning, Chair. Morning, honourable members and colleagues. I'm Kolis Kaunda from KwaZulu-Natal, permanent delegate. Thank you.
Morning, Chairperson. Morning, Department, honourable members. My name is Jabulani Nzimande, permanent delegate from Gauteng.
Morning, Chair, colleagues, esteemed guests from PSC. My name is Kenny Muimang, member of this committee from Northern Cape. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Igor Skierkogel, permanent delegate from the Free State.
Thank you very much. Prof, Makanya, would you like to do the introduction of your delegations, please?
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Badenhorst. Mine is Malta Makanya, the Commissioner of the Public Service Commission from the National Office. On my left-hand side here, we have Carmen Domingo Swartz, who is our Chief Director, responsible for this component that has to do with service delivery And on my right-hand side is Mr. Thabo Litswalo, in the same department as a director. So this is a team that I work with, Honorable Chairperson, in this functional accommodation project. Thank you so much. Oh yes, behind me we have our parliamentary officer, Ms. Nozipio Gwaza. So she's based here. The real important person, because she's here to provide the support.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you, and you're most welcome. And we're looking forward to our engagement with you today, and we thank you for taking the time to being here. Honourable members, the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation have once again indicated, and it's the second time we take note of that they can't attend this meeting today due to other engagements. We did receive a letter, and Mr. Mpelini has read the reasons into the record, but I shall also be writing to them to say that we need to get them here. We unfortunately can't. We sent our framework for our program out right in the beginning of the term, and we expect the departments to adhere to our frameworks as the oversight body in Parliament. Honourable Peter, I think you want to say something?
Yes, Chair. Chair, I do have a concern. My concern is why it's so easy for the ministers who just drop something that says they can't come. Why this is becoming a norm? The ministers are not the servants of the people. Why it's so easy for them to just say, we can't come? And you can't even get a proper report. I'm just shocked.
Yeah, Honourable Peter, today was not about the department being here. Today was about the Department of Planning, Monitoring, Evaluation and the Public Service Commission engaging with us on their recommendations going forward that will help us to do our oversight over the department. So today is really important, and that's why I didn't want to postpone this meeting. Because today the Public Service Commission are going to present to us as a committee their findings and their recommendations, which will be the tools that our committee can use going forward in our oversight of the department. And that's why I felt that this meeting had to go ahead today and not be postponed, because of the fact that the Department of Planning and Monitoring and Evaluation couldn't be here. I know the Minister, Honourable Mrs. Clark, Ms. Clark, the Minister did indicate they've got Cabinet today.
That's Minister Ramagopa, yes, Chair.
That they've got Cabinet today. And Minister McPherson, obviously his department wasn't invited to this meeting. Okay, just for clarification purposes. And then with
Thank
that,
you, Chair. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Honourable Peter, and thank you for your input. Honourable members, so with that, I think we've all had a time to go through the report. I'm going to ask Prof to take us, with your team, take us through the report and your recommendations. And then you are then welcome, Honourable members, to engage with the Professor and his team on any of the things that you would need clarity on with regard to their report. And then we will do a little bit of homework in terms of minutes of a previous meeting that we have to adopt, and then we'll conclude the meeting. I think we've all got a busy day tomorrow, so it'll be good to have a thorough meeting today with the Public Service Commission, and then take some time to prepare for tomorrow's long sitting. Thank you very much. Over to you, Prof. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honourable Chairperson. Honourable members, just to say that we really are grateful for the opportunity that you've given us, to come and present our report to your good selves, particularly because as the Public Service Commission, our sole existence is the one that has to guarantee that the question of service delivery, must be forthcoming. And as the Public Service Commission, Honourable Chairperson, being established on the basis of Section 196 of our Constitution, informed by Section 195, which infuses, these values, which are fairly critical because they inform our Constitution as foundational values. But what has then happened in the context of our establishment is that those constitutional values and principles then begin to be a lens through which we then look at what confronts us and the manner in which we approach those particular entities. So it was then within the context of an understanding of looking into our own government and the extent to which our own effectiveness when it comes to service delivery, is a reality on the ground. And what we have done then as the Public Service Commission approximately 3.5 or so years ago was then to embark on a particular study, in this instance having conceived this study in light of what is it that is going to be undertaken by the Public Service Commission that will ensure that the manner in which the work that has been done, once delivered, can assist us, to catapult the government in a manner where service delivery will then be guaranteed. So as and when this was conceptualized, we then said to ourselves, if you look at where our staff are and the expectations that we have, we are saying that the environment in which they are operating is supposed to be conducive to them to deliver the kind of service that is required. So we were then saying, informed by the status of our own functional accommodation that we all know about, the challenges that are confronting us there and so on and so forth, we said to ourselves, this is an area that requires that direct focus from our side as the Public Service Commission. But we then said, simultaneously, when one begins to look at that, you can ill afford a situation where you can then simply say, this is what we're going to be driving in isolation, because what it then means, by definition, is that it then implicates the infrastructure as a whole. Now, in its complete sense, the infrastructure will therefore mean that on one side of the coin, it is this infrastructure that we're talking about, which is our buildings, it's functional accommodation. But on the other hand, at this day and age, what we're talking about is the infrastructure that speaks also to the ICT, enabled environment. So that is why, in terms of our own projects that we had conceptualized at that time, was we are going to be driving functional accommodation on the one hand, but we'll be driving that ICT, a project on the other hand, because we see them as being intimately related. So as a team, because our team from our office are engaged in both projects, so in my case, leading this one on functional accommodation, I also then join them to support the commissioner that leads that one, so that there can be that understanding that brings about this complete picture of what we're talking about here. So initial stages of the project, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Members, informed us that the kinds of challenges that we have, have to do with a number of factors that are going to be presenting here today. But at the same time, a lack of a coordinated effort of understanding that if we are confronted with particular challenges, what kind of project do you put in place in order to address such challenges? So you find that challenges will then confront you directly and so on, but you'll basically find yourself in a situation where you simply just assume that all is well and you don't do anything about it, but it doesn't mean that the problem is going to go away. In fact, you are postponing the inevitable. But what happens in the long run is that the kinds of challenges that are confronting actually get even worse over time. So which then resulted in a situation where, in terms of our own infrastructure in this functional accommodation, we were confronted, because we're doing even these inspections in loco, as it were, discovering that the nature of the buildings, in the main, is such that they actually are raising numerous questions when you think about those that are supposed to be operating from there. And the question that you then ask yourself from a distance is, what then do you expect of those people who work in that environment to deliver the service that is required? Particularly if you think about the values that we've spoken about, led directly by the fact that we are talking about human dignity. So if human dignity is supposed to be shaping the way in which we do the work, and I subject people to an environment like that, it means that on the one hand, I accept human dignity because this is what my constitution actually demands of me, but in reality, I simply just throw it out of the window because I do not do anything about it. So in the context then of all these values, we're simply saying, let's take all of them and apply them in the context of the environment that is confronting us and so on. But in addition to that, as we're putting together the report, we then said, let's put together the departments from the side of our own government so that we can then speak about the work that we are doing, but at the same time hear them,
so that the report that we're talking about can also be infused by their own experiences, so that we don't simply just speak on their behalf without them really having anything to do with the report that we're talking about. So we then had a roundtable discussion in 2023 where we sat around the table, but there are specific departments that were targeted for a simple reason, that the nature of their work is such that people basically are going there almost on a full-time basis because of the nature of the service that they provide. So like Home Affairs, Water and Sanitation, SAPS, and so on. Now we're saying that if those departments are the ones that are sitting with us around the table, but at the same time get some departments from our provincial governments, so that we don't simply just speak from the perspective of national government without understanding the reality on the ground from the side of provincial governments to also participate. So that's basically what then the roundtable in the main was informed of. So the interesting thing was that as we were presenting that report then, we were speaking about what is it that we had actually then discovered in the context of our own work, but at the same time hearing them infusing the work that they had presented to us and so on. After that is said and done, we put together a final report that we then presented to your good selves here, in the National Assembly. But we also did share the same report after the National Assembly had actually dealt with it, but via the Portfolio Committee. That the provinces also had to have a view about what we were talking about in this particular instance. So what has then happened in the context of that development, it became apparent that when you drive a project of functional accommodation, there is a lot into it that must not also be lost in the process. One of them being this immovable asset register. Because the understanding was you can simply just not take for granted the fact that much as we have this huge portfolio of properties, some of them are not necessarily in the register as things actually understood at this day and age, for obvious reasons, that we understand this immovable asset register as a living document, in the sense that as we continue with our operations, as we identify some of these properties and so on, let them be registered formally. But as we do that work, we walk the path with the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, so that we then look at what is on the ground vis-a-vis what they have in the register. So in the process of that, they then update the register. So that is why they have a huge appreciation of the work that we are doing, because the manner in which we do it, we identify areas that are not necessarily within the gaze of these key departments. We'll go to these rural settings and so on, where people normally will not be keen to go and so on. Now, we say that if we can at least make or move a needle in areas like that, we'll then begin to have an appreciation of society about what is that we deliver as government. That is basically the logic that is driving us. Because we are saying that when we look at the resources in our own cities, much as there might be problems, but at least they are readily available. If you go to these deep, rural areas and so on, the bulk is not necessarily available. And people generally have to travel long distances in order to get services and so on. But in the main, because of the nature of what has happened over time, those who serve are also not infused by these very same constitutional values and principles. So which means that the manner in which they operate does not immediately tell them that if I've chosen to work for government, it means that I have an interest in people. So they can't actually locate the two as being an understood in unity kind of a matter. So they will go there simply because they are doing a job. So if they want to take lunch and so on, it does not matter even if people are queuing there. If they say now we have to leave, even if people were there, they just leave them. Now we are trying to build a culture that says that once people are there, you must actually have a different mindset that says that my first goal is to serve them, regardless of my circumstances. So which means I cannot go. So we're going to talk about what we are experiencing now in the context of these inspections, because there is something beautiful that is happening at the same time from our in-local inspections, where we get people in these rural settings saying that we work here, but let's actually confess that we always feel sorry for our staff because we don't leave people here. even if we are supposed to knock off at 4:30, we stay until everybody has been served. But now the problem that arises is we think about people who still have to travel to their respective homes and so on to say, how are they going to manage that? But the beauty is that you find some components of our own staff beginning to have that kind of an appreciation that as long as I've done this, I will have done myself a good service. So when we rock up there and say, this is the work that you are doing, they like the fact that we don't go there as a Public Service Commission alone. Every time we do this work, we go there with the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. And we say to them, our intention is not to expose you. It is not to say you have all these kinds of shortcomings and therefore go and get lost. We are saying that in the context of all these issues, how do we begin to set a process in motion that begins to say that we are going to be addressing these problems in this systematic fashion? These ones will require this kind of resource which we do not have. And of course, we'll have to park those. But the ones where we have to fix things and so on so that we can continue working, we are going to be doing that. And we always encourage them that, please, this is our preliminary report. Now go and do that work. We are going to have a session with yourselves once we've completed the report so that you can test to what extent you've addressed the problems that we had already identified together with yourselves. Now, the beauty is that whenever we go back, we find that the bulk of simpler matters had already been taken care of. So by the time we produce a report, you find that those things have been taken care of. And we reflect that as well when we present the report. So that is why then, Honorable Chair, honorable members, our excitement, for us at being here is to simply say, as we take you through this report, we are actually cognizant of the fact that there's so much work on your shoulders, but we are saying to ourselves at the same time that because of the work that is entrusted on you as a committee, you are the ones then who are going to be of great help in taking our recommendations to their logical conclusion. Because what is the most painful experience is to find that we do all this work, we expose all these kinds of challenges and so on, and to find that those who are responsible for doing the work then go and rest on their laurels. And then the question is, why then did we have to do that work in the first instance? And we turn around and say, no, we serve our own parliament, so we've delivered this particular work. So the question is, to what extent then there is that kind of a relationship that we build between ourselves and our own parliament? So in your opening remarks, you made it very clear, Honorable Chairperson, to say you want then to look into the recommendations that we present so that there can then be a very clear undertaking of saying that as a committee, this is how we are going to be tackling this work going forward. So that when we do report, we can simply say, at the end of the day, there is accountability that is required. So it's not just a question of the beauty of the reports being presented, and at the later stage, they gather dust. But the beauty is for these reports being produced, but then immediately after their production, I must then be so scared that immediately when the committee wants to see me, they actually want me to come and account. So accounting means that I must go then and say, out of what you had expected me to do, I've begun to address 1, 2, 3, and 4. In these areas, I have these kinds of challenges, and I'm asking the committee to assist me to see how do we unlock these areas and so on and so forth. So that we don't sit in a situation where we turn around and say, but we produce reports, but nothing has happened. So that's basically what our view is in the context of the meeting that you have availed to us, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. So that's basically how we want to bring about the introduction. And the manner in which then we are going to be doing the presentation is that we are going to be, in terms of outline that has been presented, that we are going to be covering this area, of the developments on legislative and policy matters, that are implied by our PSC bill. We will not delve into that, simply just in passing. And then get onto the departmental monitoring report against these CVPs, because we keep a close gaze on that as well, and we report on it. But we engage departments. We don't simply just do that on our own somewhere there and rock up with the results. And then speak in a stricter sense with these CVPs, constitutional values and principles, and then get onto this functional accommodation program. So the initial part, I'll then be asking Ms. Domingo Swartz to tackle. And then when we get to the functional accommodation program side, I'll then be asking Mr. Letsoalo then to address that. And then I'll come back then to present the closing remarks and the conclusion. So that's basically how we would like to pull everything together. But our own approach then, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members, is that with an understanding that the report is already at your disposal. We are not necessarily going to be going through the report as if now we are reading, reading for honorable members who actually have read the reports. All that we are going to be doing is to simply just draw the salient points for your attention so that they can then begin to matter in terms of the meaning that is attached to these areas and so on. And then soon thereafter, we'll then put that to bed and then have an opportunity for a discussion. Because the intention at the end of the day is to ensure that by the time the meeting comes to an end, at least honorable members, Honorable Chair, have that comfort that the work that we're expecting out of the Public Service Commission has actually been delivered. If there are questions, even beyond the meeting, that there is freedom, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, to say that we shall ask the PSC to answer the following, and we'll certainly be doing precisely that. So it won't just be a question of us presenting now and disappearing, because then it will not serve any purpose. That's basically the approach that we'll be taking, Honorable Chair. So with your permission then, Honorable Chair, honorable members, I will then be asking Ms. Domingo Swartz then to take this first part, so that as soon as she's done with that, and then Mr. Letsoalo then takes care of the functional accommodation side, which is comprehensive because it brings all these other elements that I've made mention of, and then we'll close the discussion. Thank you so much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Honourable Chairperson. Good morning, honourable members, and thank you so much for this opportunity. As Commissioner has already indicated, the intention is not for us to read through the presentation, but just to highlight certain aspects. My responsibility is to present on the monitoring of the department against the constitutional values and principles. And as the honourable members and Chairperson, as you have noted, that most of the information that we use to monitor and to assess the department against the constitutional values and principles emanates from the annual reports, but also the information that the Public Service Commission gathers in terms of the investigations, inspections, and research that we conduct. But I would like to ask you to focus your attention on slide number 4, because as the Commissioner has already provided you with an opening in introduction in terms of the purpose for us here today, I thought it's important for us to present our commissioners to the honourable members in terms of the representation. We've got 5 national commissioners, and they are based in Gauteng, in Pretoria National Office. And then, as we've noted, the representation from the honourable members also from the different provinces, we have our provincially based commissioners as well. So we have got a commissioner in each of the 9 provinces. The only province currently that we have a vacancy is the Northwest, but we have our Commissioner Makanya basically taking care of that province at the moment. This is the first time in almost, I think, 3 years that we have a full establishment in terms of the commission. So we are very happy and excited in terms of what that means for the work that the Public Service Commission is doing. In terms of Section 196 in the Constitution, and I think honourable members and Chair, you have read what the mandate is of the Public Service Commission as well as the oversight areas. I think it's very important that we need to emphasise that the Public Service Commission is not a department, but a constitutional body. We have the Office of the Public Service Commission that is currently a department supporting the work of the Public Service Commission, and as honourable members and Chair are aware of, with the new Public Service Commission bill, that would change. So the Office of the Public Service Commission that provides support in terms of the implementation of the mandate of the Commission will then become the Secretariat. So the current structure requires the office to fall under the Department of Public Service and Administration. So it's not that we report to the minister, but it is a way that the budget, the vote for the Public Service Commission, is then feed into the commission to actually execute the function of the commission. Just to highlight there, the focus is on maintenance of effective and efficient administration. As honourable members and chair have noted in section 195, it clearly says these are the constitutional principles that are basically the backbone for governance as far as public administration is concerned. So what we have done is, as honourable members and chair can see, we've highlighted the areas that we focus on. So we do look at the organisation. So how we are organized within a department. So it's not only the HR aspect, but looking at the mandate of a department and saying, are we really organized and set up to actually deliver on the mandate of the department? Honorable Chair and members, you would know that sometimes you get a very sexy topic in the public administration, and then all of a sudden everybody is flocking to do that type of work. But as the Public Service Commission, we always go back to the mandate of the department and say that with the challenges that we have with capacity, financial constraints, everybody needs to focus on their mandate. We also look at the administration, so in terms of the procedures, policy frameworks that are in place, accountability mechanisms that needs to be in place to ensure an effective and efficient public service. We do look into the personnel issues as well in terms of the practices within the public service, looking at recruitment, the challenges that we have there, also transfer, promotions and dismissals as well. We also look at the public administration practices in terms of the functions and activities executed to provide a service to the people, and then adherence to applicable procedures. So compliance to the letter of the law, looking at policies and procedures, and for example, the responsibility of the honourable members present today in terms of oversight over the GIAMA and how that is being implemented, and what are the key policy reforms and legislative reforms that needs to happen in order for us to actually see the benefit of these legal frameworks. We also then lastly look at the extent to which a department actually is complying with the constitutional values and principles. So Honourable Chair and members, our focus is not so much on whether a department has achieved the annual performance targets. It goes beyond that. So what we've done is we've taken the constitutional principles, we've identified key indicators to say that if you have achieved these indicators, you are complying against the relevant principle. So in our presentation for the a few slides that I will be presenting, we are presenting the scorecard, if you like, of the department against these constitutional values and principles. Commissioner has already highlighted the importance of the amendment to our bill. We are nerve-sighted. We are very excited that it's happening, but we are also very nervous because it's reinforcing the mandate of the Public Service Commission at national, provincial, and local government level, which includes the entities as well. We are a very small organization of about 350 officials. So as you can imagine, it would be a very mammoth task for us to really be visible across the country the way that we would want to be. And that's why, as Commissioner has indicated, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, it is vital for the Public Service Commission to establish a partnership, a relationship with oversight bodies like yours to really make sure that the work that we do, the investment that we made from the Public Service Commission is actually fulfilled and that the changes are felt on the ground. So that basically, as I've already indicated, is just a reinforcement and the establishment of the Secretariat instead of having a department. So after the promulgation of this bill, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, the Office of the Public Service Commission will no longer be recognised as a department, but rather the support under the Commission. On slide 8, Honourable Chairperson and Honourable Members, you will see just a representation of the constitutional values as well as the principles. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight a few of these principles that we would like the Honourable Members to take note of. In terms of high standard of professional ethics, when we look at this principle, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, we look at the compliance in terms of the financial disclosure framework. This is something that the Public Service Commission does on an annual basis in terms of scrutiny of information from all the officials working in the public service, and we identify any potential conflict of interest. And that's why we would like to highlight this morning our concern that we have that although the Public Service Commission has been identifying over the last 3 financial years, starting from 2020 to 21 up until 2022-23, Honourable Members and Honourable Chairperson will note that we did identify a potential conflict of interest, and unfortunately we have not been receiving any feedback from the department in terms of how they are actually addressing that matter. Sometimes, Honourable Members, it is a small conflict of interest, but as we all know, this has a potential of growing if somebody feels that they are getting away with something, and it just grows and festers into something that we feel we could have prevented. So here the focus is on prevention rather than dealing with the after effect of maladministration, financial misconduct, or whatever the misconduct should be in terms of that. So it is clearly that it's clear that there is inadequate compliance with the financial disclosure and conflict of interest management within the department. And we are really recommending that the department, especially through the committee, to emphasize with the department to strengthen their monitoring systems and consequence management frameworks. I think it's very important that these frameworks are already in place. It's policies and frameworks that we already have in place in the department, and we need to make sure that we actually are monitoring it and executing it and making sure that people actually address these issues within the department. The next principle that I would like to highlight, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members, is the effective economic and efficient use of resources. This is basically looking, yes, at the achievement of the department against the annual performance targets. And as Honourable Members can see, Honourable Chair, that there is a bit of a fluctuation in the department in terms of how they are performing. And our concern is, although there is underperformance within the department, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, you would see that the department does not have any problem with spending the expenditure, the vote that has been given. So there is a bit of an imbalance in terms of that. So there's a persistence of underperformance with a high expenditure, which indicates that there could be challenges as far as planning is concerned, capacity, or measurement issues. So how the department is actually measuring their achievements could be a challenge as well. We must say, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members, that what we have picked up, because as our Commissioner has indicated, when we did our roundtable into functional accommodation, we did not only look at DPWI as the custodian, but we also looked at what the client department's responsibilities are. And because both of these have a responsibility as well. Honourable Chair, Honourable Members, we need to acknowledge that a decision was taken also that in terms of the budget for accommodation was moved away from DPWI to the departments. And I think it's maybe time that we really look at the impact of that decision, because it's very difficult to be responsible for this mandate but not be allocated the budget to actually implement this mandate. So if a department does not not avail the required funds or make the commitment in the beginning of the financial year and change and money is reprioritized within that client department, it is deeply DPWI that sits with the egg on their face, because they need to make sure that the commitments that they've made is implemented, unfortunately without any budget. So I think it's very important that we do highlight that. And in terms of although as I said, our main focus is not necessarily only on a malicious tick-off of annual performance targets achieved. It's very clear that there must be an alignment between the targets that we set as well as the allocated budget. The next slide, which is slide 11, is just reflecting the information as far as the expenditure is concerned. And as already indicated, that is a concern for us. But also with the example made, or the issue raised with the committee members, is that the DPWI does not have the money, which means that if a department reprioritizes, they need to use their budget to substitute the shortfall of that specific department. Then we also have the AG opinions. There is a lot of repeat findings within the department. There's a lot of strategies. There's a lot of planning. And I think we need to have an understanding of really what is the challenges as far as these are concerned. Because the governance is the pillars on which service delivery is basically built. We're also looking at reporting on the utilization of consultants, the table that comes from the annual report of DPWI. We just like to highlight also that the table provided in the annual report does not comply with the guidelines from National Treasury. There must be much more detail in terms of the information on the consultants, what it's used for, the time period, and I'm sure that the honourable members are aware of those guidelines in terms of what the department needs to report on. Again, it speaks to the capacity of the department to deal with the strategic issues. We've also indicated people's needs must be responded to, and that just is a picture of the cases as reported to the National Anti-Corruption Hotline. And however, the feedback received as well as the closure rate has gradually decreased over the time, we are quite concerned that it seems like the department also does not have the capacity to deal with the cases that are reported. So it's also definitely something that we would like to flag. The rest of the slides then focuses on the grievances reported to the department, and Honourable Chair and honourable members, you will see that the number of grievances reported to the department has decreased over the period that we've reflected, and it seems that the reoccurring type of grievance is to do with filling of post. So irregularities as far as filling of posts, which again has to do with the governance within the department, followed by performance management, unfair treatment, salary problems, refusal to approve applications, and then lastly, disciplinary matters. Disciplinary matters is very small in comparison with the rest, but also having because of the challenges with capacity, at one stage the department was referred to as Hollywood with all the acting capacities within the department, and if approval needs to be sought for projects with high financial implications, you would find people acting, not wanting to approve that. And if I can use the word afraid to approve that in inverted commas, because they don't understand the details and the implications of that application. We also want to then highlight the slide on the vacancy rate on slide number 16. Although the standard is generally 10%, Honourable Chairperson and Honourable members, because this department is also serving the whole of the public service, even 10% vacancy rate is high for them because they need to have the warm bodies to execute their mandate. The high vacancy rate at senior management level also speaks to the challenges in terms of governance. So there's not really the foundation in terms of making those governance and strategic decisions is not in place because of the acting capacities that we do have within the department. We also have on slide 17 number of misconduct cases. And there, the highest is the dereliction of duty. So again, very important as far as the emphasis for how do we improve service delivery. We need to have consequent management in place within the department so that when these things happen, there is clear consequences for those who have misconduct. The department reported a sharp increase in the number of misconduct cases between this period, although there is a notable decline as we've seen in 2023-24 as far as the graph is concerned, and I've already indicated that the main thing is to do with the dereliction of duty, which speaks to the professional ethics of the colleagues within the department. We've also have precautionary suspensions as on slide 18. And I think it's very important that we take note of the costs related to these suspensions that has increased significantly between 2019 and 2020, as well as 2021-22. With a notable decline, but it can also be related to the fact that there's also a decline in the number of the establishment within the department. So there's less personnel, so obviously there will be less suspensions as well. So reporting of precautionary suspension data on the annual report is not as per the Treasury guidelines, as the number of days are not indicated. So although the information is available, we have no idea of the duration of the suspension. I think, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, in terms of the constitutional values and principles, those slides does give a picture to the Honourable Members. But if we could just end off by saying it's very important that we need to enhance the accountability systems within the department. We need to leverage the findings of the Public Service Commission to inform this select committee's oversight programs, public hearings, as well as the DPW performance reviews that is undertaken by your good selves to review and to ensure that we improve the governance within the department. I thank you so much, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members.
Thank you. Please continue. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Members. I think one of the points perhaps that one needs to highlight in this area, Honourable Chair, has to do with this devolution, of the budgets, for maintenance to departments, while DPWI is expected to carry the can in terms of the work. So what then tends to happen more often than not is that departments fail to prioritize the kind of maintenance that is required, for their own properties. For the simple reason that what they normally do with the kinds of resources at their disposal, they will basically begin to channel resources to other areas that in their view are pressing needs at the expense of what is supposed to be happening. And now the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure is actually then at an awkward situation because they can't dictate to these departments. Then what happens in many instances is that they end up having to invest in some of these departments so that things don't fall apart completely. So at this day and age, they are being owed billions of rands by departments, which is actually a tragedy. Because what we are simply saying is, to what extent do we have communication channels that matter between departments as government? Because if those kinds of channels were in existence
and functioning properly, we would not have been sitting with the kinds of situation that we are finding ourselves in. So in a sense, there is something that needs to give in the process if we want to make some kind of progress in this regard. So just wanted to mention that one, Honourable Chair, so that honourable members can consistently keep a gaze on this matter, that as these questions arise, this is the kind of frustration that the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure actually finds itself in. So the question then is, to what extent should we basically begin to say maybe there should be a review around that specific area and so on. So that's a matter that I just wanted to raise as we close this part and then enter the part on the functional accommodation, Honourable Chair.
Thank you. I think that a practical manifestation of what you just said would be the Department of Defence and the Department of Correctional Services owing Public Works, I think, in the region of 3 billion each. And we spoke about that right in the beginning of the term. Honourable members will remember that. Thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. Please continue.
Well, thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. So then I'll be requesting Ndadile Zwalo then to proceed.
Thank you, Commissioner. I hope I'm audible enough. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honourable members, and good morning once again to my colleagues as well from the PSC. Yeah, I mean, just to highlight a few things, I think we know that there is public service commissions basically globally. Almost every country has got a public service commission. But what really sets aside the South African Public Service Commission is that we don't just look at labor relations only. I was looking a few days ago at the report by the Kenyan Public Service Commission. They mainly focus on labor relations issues. They, in fact, if you look at the Nigerian one, they even employ officials, like they actually do all the advertisement for government officials. The one in India, they actually, okay, maybe I must not go into that, but anyway, India has got one as well, but also it focuses on, recruitment and all that. So PSC goes beyond that. We go beyond grievances, we go beyond labor relations issues. We also look at service delivery. And that speaks to some of the CVPs as well, especially the ones that have to do with the issues of access, the issues of equitable services, and human rights issues as well. When we do some of these inspections, as Commissioner has mentioned, we try as much as possible, to be representative. Obviously, Public Service Commission is understaffed. We can't, when we're doing inspections, we can't have a representative sample. However, we do make sure that we go to, your rural areas. We make sure that we go to your urban areas. Just the last inspections we had in KZN were at a place called Ndwedwe Magistrate Court, which is pretty much rural. And some of the findings there, just to highlight a few things, Commissioner, since he mentioned them a bit in the introduction, you find that there's a facility there, like the Magistrate Court in Ndwedwe, is sitting on land that does not necessarily belong to the state, but the building itself belongs to the state. As a result, that can cause other issues. I remember one of the things they mentioned was a road that was being built, being constructed. So because the land itself is not under, DPWI, so the developer wanted to cut through the magistrate court itself, where the magistrate court actually said, no, you can't. This property belongs to the state. However, the land itself does not belong to DPWI. So those are some of the things we have to deal with, and Commissioner takes up those things, for example, where land is owned by SAPS, rather the property, but the land belongs to the municipality. DPWI is not registered under DPWI, or maybe it even belongs to, traditional affairs, or rural and land development. In that case, DPWI is actually not able to do maintenance efficiently because essentially it's not in the asset register. They wouldn't even know where the land is because it's not there, it's not registered. So there's this whole process of vesting that's taking place. We are aware DPWI meets quarterly, provincially in terms of the vesting of properties, being transferred from municipalities, from provinces to national in some cases. So those are some of the challenges that we face. And one thing I wanted to highlight as well before I get into, I won't do everything on the presentation. Commissioners and also Ms. Domingo Soares have touched on a lot of these things, so I won't really dwell on much of that. But one thing I also wanted to highlight, I think most of us here are familiar with research, are familiar with implementation projects. And we know if we were to look at your things like your logical framework approach, your theory of change framework, we know that there are preconditions for any implementation to be able to be successful. There are preconditions. And I believe that the committee here, rather, Chair, is able to help us with some of those preconditions. Ms. Dominico Soares, for example, mentioned the issue of the funding model of the DPWI, rather, even the PSC, but of the DPWI, mentioned the issue of the funding model. It's actually pointless for us sometimes to, mention the issues of, for example, based on GIAMA, DPWI is supposed to assess properties, a full assessment, including engineers, every 5 years. But with the current funding model, they are not able to do so. They cannot employ as much artisans or engineers as they want to, because the funding model basically does not allow them to. And those are some of the things we find in the field. And that's why sometimes, I remember I had a conversation with Carmen that sometimes, it's difficult to even follow up on the recommendations because the preconditions for them to implement are actually not there. The money is sitting with the departments, and they are actually not able to do what they are supposed to do. And also that even creates gray areas, because remember, honorable members, that as per GIAMA, all state property is under DPWI. They are the custodians. But imagine if now, there's, these devolutions, there is also, delegations. Now, that creates a gray area because now DPWI is not necessarily fully responsible of maintenance, but by law, they are fully responsible. Now, we have had situations, and I think Commissioner can attest to that, where the client department will say, no, it's not our responsibility, but DPWI will also say it's also not our responsibility because we don't have the budget. Now, it creates a gray area where now some of the state properties are actually in a miserable condition because there is no proper accountability. So what I'm saying to us there is that even as we look at we encourage DPWI on revision of GIAMA and other legislative policies there. We need to ensure that the element of accountability is quite clear. Perhaps departments can devolve, yes, but there should still be a mechanism of monitoring state property by DPWI and by other oversight bodies as well within government. So I just wanted to highlight those few things before we start. Like I said, I will skip a lot of things since our Commissioner and also Ms. Domingo Bacas have covered most of the matters. Now you can see here that we have been, for the past number of years, being engaged on this project of functional accommodation, which mainly the aim was to review the entire ecosystem, as Commissioner has already said, of the provision of functional accommodation to support government and propose measures to ensure efficient and effective service delivery within the public service. And as Commissioner was saying, this involved the initial project, there was a round table, where we actually sat with DPWI itself and client departments, mainly the safety and security cluster that was really represented there. You can see that in terms of the round table, the purpose there was to gain a better understanding of issues affecting the provision and management of functional accommodation to national departments by DPWI. And we see, as I've already mentioned, those are the departments that mainly participated. And also we're able to engage with the client departments themselves and to get an understanding of broader issues that are actually being a hindrance in terms of the functional accommodation project. Now, as Commissioner has already mentioned, we currently are in the field. So as we are in the field, we actually, in addition to collecting new data, we're actually monitoring also findings from the round table. And hence I've mentioned issues of the gray area, about who's accountable. Those are issues that emanate from the round table, but we see that in the field, as we go to the field, that they are actually still persisting about who's exactly responsible for this, about the vesting issues as also mentioned. Now, one of the things that was identified in the round table was the lack of systems in terms of managing the state's immovable assets. Hence, when we took this project forward, now we focus on the immovable asset register. I think most of you are familiar with an immovable asset register. DPWI uses a specific system called Archibus for them. It's basically a database, simply put, it's a database. However, they also use an IR database, Excel. It's an Excel database complemented by a software called Archibus that generally looks at, records all the state assets. And I should say that was the first leg of, of the project following the round table. We actually got the IR itself in Excel, and also Akibas. We were able to have access online. We had a number of engagement with DPWI where we'll sit with them in front of the Akibas. We'll actually compare Akibas with the Excel itself that gets submitted to the Auditor General. And some of the findings were quite interesting. I won't go through all of this, but some of the findings were quite interesting in terms of what we found. You find that, as Commissioner has already mentioned, that you go to a building. We went to a particular one in Lichtenberg. When you go to that particular facility, in the asset register, you will see that the condition is recorded as, which is called ABC, average building condition. It will be recorded as 80%, meaning that it's actually excellent. But then you go there with your eyes, before you even do any technical evaluation, you see that this is actually less than 10%. So the condition that you see in the IAR is not the condition that you actually observe when you go to the field. One interesting aspect is a unit of measure called remaining useful life, and I will refer to it as RUL. You will see somewhere in the presentation as well. So RUL, obviously, it shows how many useful lives of this building is remaining. You find that a building is reaching 20 years. But you go there, you see that, no, this is not even 20 years. Not even all offices are being used, or not even all the offices are being here because of the condition. So those are some of the discrepancies we find in the field between the, between the IAR and what we physically observe. And again, simply the challenges is because DPWI is not able to do verifications every 5 years as they are supposed to. Because if they were able to do that, we won't be resting with those kind of situations. Remember that in terms of, and I'm talking about national only, I'm not talking about national, provincial DPWI, I'm not talking about municipalities. It's impossible for DPWI national to look at the over the 23,000 assets that they are responsible for. It's impossible to do that every 5 years, without the resources that they need. So just to highlight that one. Now, the second element that we are now currently looking at, also emanating from the roundtable, is the user asset management plans. Now, the user asset management plans, what they really are, it's a strategic document that is supposed to contain all the assets, in the nation, basically. The condition of the asset, how much it will actually cost to maintain the asset for the entire financial year, your acquisition plan. It actually should also contain the disposal. If you know that this asset is not, fit for purpose, or maybe not even fit for purpose, maybe it's no longer being required. I remember a colleague of mine, it might have been Ms. Domingo Swartz, I can't remember, who mentioned the issue of your former colleges of education. Some of them are actually still in a good condition, but they're not being used. What is the disposal plan for that can actually benefit the state? Can the state lease that out? Can it be sold to private? So on and so forth. So your user asset management plan is supposed to actually lay out all those and so that we are able to manage our assets efficiently. Now, based on the round table, you can see that there's a number of recommendations that emanated from there. One of the key ones there, as you can see, is the issue of poor lease planning, management, and condition of assets. That's what I've already indicated. And this, honorable members, we find that is still prevalent, especially one of our findings as we go to the field is that we're not just looking at your office accommodation only. We also look at, staff accommodation, barracks, or so on and so forth. And the state of the barracks is actually, you won't believe the condition. If we had pictures, I will show some of the pictures if we had them. But now the challenge there is also lease management, because if you look at all barracks, they're actually under the client department. They are not under DPWI at all. But in terms of legislation of GIAMA, DPWI is still responsible. However, you find that, I remember the one we were at in KZN, and they mentioned that it's possible that people who are even staying in the barracks are not actually members of SAPS. Because there is no lease agreement with the officials. There is no one monitoring, the condition. There is no properly trained facility manager. I'm talking about the end user facility manager, about how to even log calls to DPWI, or to even the client department. So those are some of the things we're finding around lease management that need to be dealt with. And second thing that's affecting lease management is the one we mentioned earlier on of vesting of properties, where a property you find that is not necessarily under DPWI. That presents also, some kind of maintenance issues. I remember we were at a police station. It should have been Google too. Just around the corner. The police station itself was actually not in the IAR. as a result, DPW was not even able to provide. In fact, we had a bit of a funny moment where one of the colleagues from DPW, they were not aware that it's actually there, because it's not in the IAR. So they are not able to actually provide any support. And if you go to a list of 100% devolved police stations, it's not on that list, which means it's actually under DPWI. So there are all those challenges that actually affect the list management. And you can see that there are some recommendations there that the PSC has made in terms of share list planning and management process and improve communication, ensure improved maintenance schedules to prevent deterioration, condition of buildings, regular monitoring of buildings for compliance with occupational safety and regulations. And we've already said some of these are impossible because of the current funding model. However, where we have seen some improvement, but not in all provinces, there are instances where, for example, DPW meets with client departments on a quarterly basis. That we have seen in the Western Cape, that also in the Free State happens, and also the recent case that as well it happens. But then you find that it also does not happen with all departments, because remember the departments are into clusters as well. It perhaps mainly happens with the security cluster, but not with everybody else. So those are some of the things we're still looking into as we continue our inspections. I won't dwell on this as well, but one of the things that, in terms of implementation of recommendation was to notice that there's a joint tax team actually that exists with TPW. Like as we said, most of the meetings ceased during COVID actually. COVID disrupted a number of things, but for some reason, officials do not get back into the flow of things. So that still needs to we need to follow up on it to ensure that it happens. Also, one of the encouraging things also that was presented, I believe it's 2 weeks ago at the GSKID meeting, was the issue of the asset prioritization strategy, which is actually what a lot of countries, if you look at the European Union, they've been doing a lot of that. An asset prioritization strategy basically means, do we still need this building? Or can it be better used elsewhere? But with South Africa, it's a bit tricky because remember, we basically more or less a developmental state. We are heavily focused on social services, providing services for the most vulnerable. So it's difficult to dispose the majority of state property. We still need to keep some of it, but we need to be strategic and really, look at, based on the asset prioritization metrics or plan, but also on the user asset management plans, which properties can we actually keep and which ones can we actually, not use. We've mentioned this issue of lack of joint procurement planning and management. Perhaps just to dwell a little bit on that, and also Ms. Domingo Suarez has mentioned this earlier on about heavy reliance on consultants. And one of the issues that are causing this is due to, I think we all know about the former DPW workshops, where they'll have artisans, where they'll have, engineers. Those are largely no longer there. There's some attempt to resuscitate them, but I promise you, every province we went to, every DPW regional office we went to, the main concern is that there are no more workshops. And because of that, they have to rely on consultants, who most of the time actually do some shoddy work, actually. We've seen some of it, where you find that a simple thing as the flush system of a toilet gets broken every month. Every day, you see, it gets broken often, and there's even suspicions of corruption there, that some of it is actually intentional, that we actually need to get this, Yeah, so that's some of the things we're looking at. This also, Commissioner touched on it, inefficient financial planning and management. Again, that is caused by the funding model as well as it sits, so I won't go through all of this. We know that, some of the maintenance backlog that DPW is sitting with, again, is caused by lack of competent officials in terms of technical, people with technical skills, but also the issue of funds just being not available to do the work that they need to do. I think if we can deal with these two, the other issues of ill discipline, those can be managed easily, because it will be clear that the issue is actually this one, but not a resource matter. I won't dwell on this as well, but perhaps I need to, in terms of especially triple Ps, to speak briefly about them. I mean, we have seen, especially in Pretoria. There's a number of triple P's projects. You know, if you look at the Department of International Relations, I think Environmental Affairs as well, some of those are great, but some of the issues we find is that it's with the handing over of the contract. That's where there's issues. A building has been functioning properly for the last 5 years. Now it's time to hand it back to the state. We've seen that at Hoshimampuru. You find that now, you know, the contractor or whoever was in charge of the building will refuse to hand in things like passwords for the security system. So for them to hand over the password now, they need a new tender now. You know, those are some of the things we saw in some of the facilities, whereby, I don't want to go into details because these are some security issues, whereby some things cannot operate anymore because the contractor refused to hand over particular things and they actually need a new contract for them to get, you know, just to give a password, you know, now you need to give them a new contract. So those are some of the things we did raise with the minister and that are being looked into, how contracts with this triple piece are actually being formulated by the DPWI to ensure that contractors don't, abuse those kind of loopholes that, there's nothing in the contract about intellectual property, for example. You know, those are things that we are also looking at. Organizational structure, capacity, and systems, we did mention this. One of the things we found, especially with the issue of systems, we've mentioned Akibas, we've mentioned the IAR, but there's also other systems that are being used to capture immovable assets. So what we really advocated for was that there should be only one system. We can't be having Akibas, you have now also an Excel database, then you have also other systems being used in parallel by different provinces. So those are some of the matters that actually need to be addressed. Just moving right along to highlight the current projects, I know we have already mentioned this briefly. In terms of the user asset management plan, this is the current project that's taking place, and you can see we are evaluating user asset management plans in about 3 provinces. As you can see, we are now left with Eastern Cape to go to look at the user asset management plans. And like I said, one of our findings is that we find that, there is actually no user asset management plan. Based on GIAMA, we need to have every property needs to be in a user asset management plan. But you go to some end user department, they don't even know about it. There's no training that is being provided to the facility manager. So basically the asset is not there on record. It's not there. Therefore, you cannot know the condition of the facility. And also to highlight a few things, as you can see here, this is from the asset register from last year. You can see that about 20% of our assets, they are in a very poor or unfit, or they're unfit for occupancy. About just 0.49%, which is 471, are the ones that are in an excellent, condition. So we need to look at that. I remember we did raise it with the PWL, for example, that do they even know where are those 20% of assets that are in a poor state? Do they even know where they are? What is the remaining useful life of those buildings? What about, Commissioner mentioned the issue of occupational health and safety as well. What about also the officials who work in those kind of environments? So those are some of the things we're looking at. So one of the recommendations we made with respect to this is that there's a need to review average building condition and RUL for specific properties and actually have an implementation plan of how are we going to deal with this, or even a disposal plan, how are we going to deal with these properties. I've already mentioned the issue of non-compliance with 5-year assessments. We've mentioned what is causing that. The issue of reliance on service providers and outsourcing. We've mentioned that shortage of technical expertise and staffing gaps. Have also dwelled on that. Now, one of the key issues we find now, especially if I skip to the one on rather ineffective communication and liaison. Now, this is a problem that actually sits with DPWI. This now we can actually blame squarely on them because remember, departments have to log calls. Whenever there's an issue at the end user department, a call has to be logged. Now, what we found in the field was that often head office, which will be in Pretoria, the calls are actually not registered correctly. Somebody can log a call about the roof, for example, that the roof is collapsing. Now, the turnaround time may be longer, but also the official responsible for actually capturing the call will actually refer it to the wrong unit, or maybe doesn't respond that, no, what you logged is your client department that needs to deal with it. Now, you find that because of the silence, now the building now is continuing to deteriorate. So those are some of the things that we said need to be looked at in terms of actually training the officials who sit at the call center, who actually log calls. Are they referring them to the correct unit within the DPWI? Because remember, DPWI has got different units. Maintenance is dealt with by FM facility manager, but if you come with something like a major roof that needs to be even, a new one needs to be put in place, perhaps that's a capital project. So a different unit within DPW that needs to deal with that. Just to mention a few. Yeah, look. This we have mentioned as I was talking, so I won't dwell on this. We have mentioned what we are doing at the moment in terms of what's underway, and then this is where I think I'll hand over to Commissioner. But really, what I want to highlight is the preconditions, and perhaps that is what the committee can help us with, honourable members, the preconditions that will actually enable DPWI to be able to implement, and also to enable the PSC itself to be able to be, we are biting, I wanted to say to give us more power, but it also helps us, when we actually do recommendations, knowing that, there are other oversight bodies that are actually also highlighting and emphasizing the same issues that we have raised. I'll hand over back to Commissioner. Thank you very much, Chair.
No, thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson, honourable members. Perhaps when that happens, you find that from the side of the department, that weakness is exploited by the consultants that you bring on board, which partly explains why we are sitting with the problem of this report that we are currently now preparing. Because we are saying it doesn't make sense to say your security system is no longer functional simply because the provider that you had has exited the system. Now they take away, the intellectual property. Now we say, but it's paid for by the state. Yeah. So automatically intellectual property belongs to the state. But we find that insofar as contract management is concerned, that from the department, they didn't have that kind of expertise. So which then explains why we're sitting with that problem. So which is why he says that at this day and age, we are sitting with a situation where they are the ones who want to come back and say, now we can divulge the information, but provided we are the ones who get the contract to do the work. So in a sense, then we are basically finding ourselves at the mercy of the very same consultants. So that's a part that we need to address. But secondly, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, what we were saying to the department as well, that it is important for them to keep track of this program of training, those that you bring on board, so that we can have at least the guarantee that they will deliver the service. Well, what we found, particularly in provinces, is that because of the devolution, the clients will then hire people to come and do the work. But they'll come and do shoddy work. Yeah. But because they don't have expertise internally, they can't actually say, we are signing off because the work is proper, it's of quality. They sign off because they say so. So it's actually on their word. Now we're saying to the department, actually you must develop a system that says that as the department, rather provide that expertise so that when they sign off, it is on the basis of what you have said, because you have people who are professionals within the department. So those are kinds of things that they said they're going to be reviewing themselves, because fortunately, with the work that we do, we also have these quarterly meetings with the minister and his entire team. So the beauty is that when we have such meetings, that entire team of his executive sit around the table and we take them through these reports, blow by blow. As it has happened now that just last week, that we had agreed that we're going to spend at least more than 5 hours next week, to help them to understand where we are as the Public Service Commission, so that they can then go back and do the work. But as the team have been saying, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, that the biggest challenge now is with regards to what has happened with the devolution. That much as they have capacity to do what is supposed to be done, but the clients are the ones who are holding the purse. So the clients have a different view about what they have to do. So these ones are actually then taking the flag.
because work is not happening. So that's where we really are. So which means that at a global level, that we'll then be seeking the committee's intervention, to find a way of ensuring that we can marry a system that will then deliver results, at the end of the day. So from our side, Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Members, we have then structures that we deliver to our work that we've spoken in terms of the submission, to the forum, that involves, all the directors general, so that there can be that kind of an overall view about these kinds of issues because of the nature of work that they do. That also with the GISKIT, we've done the same thing, to bring them on board in that specific area and so on. So we are basically just ensuring that there is nothing that is left to chance here. But then from where we are saying that the support from your good selves, Chairperson, honourable members, that your support is actually going to give us that strength to run with this kind of work. Because we are saying that we fight these battles, but at the end of the day, if nothing happens, of course, nothing will happen at the end of the day. But if they know that they do not have anywhere else to hide, so of course, then we'll be expecting something, to be coming our way. So that is why we are saying that as we sit here, in terms of this work, this is basically our plea, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members. Thank you so much.
Prof. Makanya, let me appreciate the presentation from you and your team. Lots of passion. It's very clear that that all three of you have lots of passion for what you are doing, and we appreciate that as a committee. Thank you also, Mrs. Domingo Swartz, and thank you, Mr. Litswalo, for your inputs. I think, honourable members, we, as the National Council of Provinces, look between the linkage between provinces and Parliament, and all of us have properties that belong to Department of Public Works in our provinces, and I think there's a really good set of recommendations here that can serve as fantastic guidelines when we do oversight. But with that, I'll like to hand over to you to interrogate, if you want, the presentation by the Public Service Commission and ask questions for clarity. So let's start with Honourable Skeerkogel, and then we'll do it from the bottom up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, I think you said it, and I think the department that we actually have to interrogate is the one that's not here about asking questions. But mine about, and my question is going to be about the work you do. Now, is this being conducted with all departments? Because I think these kind of reports and these investigations that you do, and it's clearly set out in the Constitution, will be very valuable for us. So I would just want to find out, are you busy with other departments? And what is the turnaround time per department when you do this? Because clearly this report, we can see most of this was from the previous administration. Because the last time you reported was 2023, 2024. So it will be interesting to also see when you come back, what is the correlation between the two reports now with the 7th administration? And then with your recommendations, and the Commission mentioned it so many times that you're looking for our help and to give you a bit more bite. So I want to find out what is your recommendation for us to let it be getting extra resources or extra legislations to give you more bite? Because now, if you follow what the Constitution say, you investigate, you report, you give directives, you give advice, but nowhere you can see in here it says enforce what you are recommended. So how do you get that through? And then do you do provinces? Because sometimes some of these things, provinces also need to, in a whole, needs to be investigated, because sometimes that's the reason why some of these departments fall. Then I just on the asset management. I hear that you say it's 23,000 assets, but how is then, and sometimes they say they can't verify it, and for me, I still can't comprehend it. Why? You know, these properties are registered with the deed registrar's office. So can't something be pulled? Can't there be letters or sent to municipalities? Because clearly this property might have a ARF number or something where that's registered. So to speed up that process. So is that not being done, or because I fail to comprehend why we are not able to identify state assets, and I think that's about it. I'm more interested in the Commission itself than what we've heard from the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Skirkhoff, and I think that should be the focus of our questioning is on the work that the Public Service Commission does and on clarity with regard to their recommendations, and that'll help us to do our oversight better when we meet with the department next time. Honourable Muimang.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me start by appreciating the presentation from Professor Datele Swalo and Mekhamenswart. The presentation indeed will help us a great deal in terms of exercising oversight over the Department of Public Works in terms of our mandate. Just I think 3 areas. The first one relates to the capacity at provincial commissioners to be able to also factor in their work the state of the properties that, in terms of GIAMA, should be used as a platform to implement these recommendations. Do we have enough capacity at provincial level? I'm raising this point because the nature of the NCOP is that we are different from NA. So in this instance, that would mean to get a sense across all 9 provinces in terms of the properties that are used by the provincial government. That will help a great deal for us to be able to elevate those issues on the platform of the national department. More than that, for the minister. Now, on slide 23, there is a referral to a list of top 10 landlords, the property mafias. It will be important just to get a sense in terms of if you could be provided with that. Then slide 24, there is a referral to a model for asset register recapitalization, the triple P that speaks to the BOT, the ROT, and the LTO. It will be important just to get if the committee can be provided with that model, so that at least in our interaction with the department, we are much more armed. Then the last one, Parliament. Have you done some work on parliamentary, because obviously the precinct portfolio, I suspect both the parliamentary villages and also the parliamentary building will fall under the prestige lines. The prestige lines. It will be important just to get a sense in terms of the status, so that we should not go out and do some work on areas, but at a subjective level, we do not look into our status, because that's where we should start as parliamentarians. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Muimang. I think let's deal with those 2 sets of questions to break it up, and then we'll go back to Honourable Nzimande and Honourable Kaunda. Thanks.
Honourable Chair, I'll allow the team to first take a shot on the questions, and then I'll follow them.
Thank you, Commissioner, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members. Thank you for the questions. Yes, in terms of the work that the Public Service Commission does, as indicated, Honourable Member, we are a very small organisation. So the team that has been doing this work is myself, Mr. Lutualo, and then we've got about other 3 colleagues. So we are the 5 people working across the different provinces. But during the round table, the departments that were present highlighted the need to focus on the safety and security cluster departments, because the impact that it really has on the safety of the country as well. So basically looking at police stations, looking at courts, and those types of things is important, because it's not just about the colleagues that actually deliver the service in those infrastructure, but also criminals that needs to be held in those infrastructures. So that's the area where we focused on. We can provide you with much more detail. As Mr. Lutualo indicated, the latest report, Honourable Member, is one that we've just finished in the previous financial year, so 2024-25, and that report has been classified as secret due to the nature of the information that is captured. But I'm sure that we can share that through the chairperson of the committee, because we have a password and everything on it, because it has security implications for the sites that we have visited. Our reports is detailed because we clearly show the department what are the concerns of the commission and how these areas needs to be addressed. But that we can definitely avail to the committee, or if the committee is in a position to have a closed session, I'm sure that through our commissioner we will be able to present that report in a closed session to ensure that we comply with the classification of the report. The turnaround time is, because we are a small group, the project started in 2021, but we make sure, Honourable Members, that we have a deliverable at the end of each financial year. So we provide status of the current situation as it is at the end of that financial year. I think the recent work that we've done is a good baseline for the new administration, because we can then see going forward the improvements based on the work that we've just completed in the previous financial year, and use that as a baseline to basically monitor the improvements or the lack of improvements that result from that. In terms of support, we really need the support of this committee to assist us with the monitoring of the implementation of the PAC recommendations. We still have departments that just disregard a request from the Commission to respond to progress on the implementation of recommendations. As our Commissioner has indicated, we work with the departments in a partnership capacity. It's not a punitive approach that we would like to use, because ultimately we are in it to see change. We are not here to blame, we are here to ensure excellence within the public service. So the last resort of the Public Service Commission is to subpoena these departments. And unfortunately, Honourable Members, as the member previously indicated, if a minister, if a DG decides, a HOD decides that they're not going to come, they're not going to come. So the consequence management model overall of holding the relevant role players accountable is very important. And I think that is where we are really going to need this committee's support in terms of holding the relevant people accountable and calling them to task where through these committees to ensure that they basically account. I'm going to leave the vesting of the property to Mr. Lutualo, but also just want to add that the service, we conduct various service delivery inspections as well. In all our service delivery inspections that the Public Service Commission undertakes, Honourable Chair, we make sure that there is an element of infrastructure. We always look at the infrastructure that enables or hinders service delivery. So we have done a lot of inspections across the country in education, with the most recent presentation that we are going to present to the Minister on the progress on the pit latrines in the most vulnerable areas. Also the work in home affairs, as honourable members can attest, that is a very important department, so we are very actively involved, and we have reports on inspections that we've done with home affairs as well. The work that we completed under the leadership of Commissioner also for the police in terms of looking at the forensic science laboratories. We actually did an initial inspection, and the next year we did a follow-up with the main focus on trying to understand the backlog as far as the DNA matters are concerned. So we've made clear recommendations in terms of that, and then lastly also, honourable members, the work that we've done in the Department of Health. So what we can do is we can make sure that we create a link, and we will make sure that all the relevant inspection reports in these areas are then shared with the honourable members. I'm going to go over to the next, and then I'll give over to Tabo just to respond. Honourable member, the next question in terms of the capacity of the provincial commissioner. So is it the provincial office of the Public Service Commission? Yes, it is actually very small. We have, as I've said, in all the provinces, we have our provincially based commissioner, and it can range from anything from 6 to 10 to 12 officials. So with our mandate being reinforced, clearly that would not be sufficient in terms of us really executing our mandate effectively. So we do not have enough capacity, but we are finding partnerships with other institutions that also have an oversight function. So we try and work with all the oversight bodies, the portfolio committees, as Commissioner has indicated, but also other research organizations to see how we can support each other. So we've established MOUs, memorandums of understanding or agreements, so that we can supplement our capacity. But I think this, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, is just going to become a growing challenge for the Public Service Commission as the mandate is expanded, as I've already indicated. We will definitely provide your good selves with the top 10 landlords that we actually did get that information from DPWI. In terms of the models, we have our report that clearly explains these models with supporting documents as well. We have not really looked at the parliamentary precinct per se, in terms of looking at the infrastructure, looking at the accommodation as well. But at the time of the previous Minister DeLo, we did put together a profile in terms of the information, because our commission also wanted to understand what is the profile of the precinct for Parliament. But what we can do is we can also then share the presentation that we did for our commission in terms of the information that we were able to source and the analysis that we were able to conduct on the information that was available to us. I think with that, I would like to hand over to Mr. Lutwalo to deal with the vesting and any other issue that I might have missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Domingo Suarez. I was just trying to show something here, but it's failing me. Let me try this again. Oh, there we go. just to mention in terms of vesting. I don't know why the PowerPoint is not showing clearly. I'll just use this one then. Now, in terms of vesting, we know the transition to democracy was not necessarily a smooth one administratively in terms of sharing of records, so on and so forth. So as a result, there's a lot of legacy issues that the DPWI itself is dealing with, Honourable Member. You'll find that there are still properties, for example, although CISK is no longer there, you'll still find a property registered under CISK or Kazankulu or Leboa. Anyone knows Leboa? People don't know Leboa. Leboa was actually, a self-governing state as well, which is where I was born anyway. But I just wanted to say that you'll still find a property registered under Leboa. So that property, in a way, belongs to the state, but it's not on the DPW register because of the transfer of records. It's not there. So those are kind of legacy issues that the DPW is dealing with in terms of former homelands. Secondly, in terms of either municipalities or even your traditional authority, you find that there's a property, the land belongs to the municipality. However, the actual building there, maybe it's got an SAPS, and now that's now under national government. So in those cases, that's where now a lot of, surveying of the land has to be done. That takes quite a while because the timeline we've been given was just for the surveying of the land to confirm the boundaries, that's 3 months. That alone takes 3 months. So in most cases on the register, some of this property will be recorded as SDF, state domestic property. So there's a recognition that this is being used by the state. However, it does not belong to the state officially. So those are some of the things that DPWI is still dealing with. There was a report provided, and I think we can also share it to the committee, maybe through our secretariat as well, that currently they are around at about 85%, I think, in terms of registration of all those properties. Yeah, so that they are officially registered under DPWI. But to highlight one thing also that I believe it will deal with your question as well. DPWI has got about 3 registers, asset registers that we are aware of. There is a land register. A land register deals only with land, no buildings, just land only. Now there is an immovable, there's now a property register with immovable, with improvements rather, which is what I'm showing here. So the 23,000 I was referring to, I was mainly referring to SAPS and DOJ, the ones we've been looking at, sampling kind of those. But if you look at the whole asset register with improvements, about 77,000. So it's quite a huge portfolio. It also covers, sites in the islands. Maybe through our commissioner, we'll go through one of the islands and inspect. We'll see. But anyway, so it's over 77,000. So you can imagine, the magnitude of what the DPW really has to deal with. Now, in addition to the land and improvements register, there's also component register. So the register, and in the future, I think we're going to look at that as well. Basically, it shows where all the infrastructure is. So we will see what's under even this building, the kind of, whether it's a sewage system, the piping, so on and so forth. So that's another register, which we actually are not paying so much attention to, but we actually ought to, because remember we have issues of bridges that have been collapsing, for example, or even some old, pumping system, somewhere else. So we actually need to look at that as well. But otherwise, the land register with improvements refers to land where there's buildings, and it's about just over 77,000 and a half, as you can see there. That's what we've been sampling throughout all those provinces and looking at particular facilities. So you can see that it does present a challenge in terms of the vesting of property. Should a property be owned by either the former homelands or by even a municipality? Now, thirdly, what I also wanted to mention is that, and I think it will address your question as well, Honourable Member, you will realize that, as you are aware, DPWI has got regional offices in 9 provinces. That's the national DPWI, rather. It's got regional offices in 9 provinces. Those regional offices are in charge of national properties that are in the provinces, which is what we're currently dealing with. However, I think you mentioned it there in your question, there is provincial DPWI, which we're currently not dealing with. Some provinces will be dealing with that. I know, for example, our provincial office in Mpumalanga will actually be looking at assets, that are now under the provincial DPWI. However, in terms of the legislative mandate, they all comply to the same one. In terms of the issue of user asset management plans, it does not matter whether it's provincial, national, or even municipal. User asset management have got to be there. So there is some commonalities. And actually, even where I think Ms. Domingos was mentioned that even where we have been working with provinces, the same issues we see when we inspect supporting a provincial office, the same issue we see with national as well when looking at national assets. So just to answer your question there. Also, I wanted to display something I also failed to show there, but I want to quickly skip to, I think it's on page 35 of the report, if it's actually here, to mention the asset management system that you referred to, Honorable Member. That if we look at now, this is based on the ISO for asset management now. If you look at it in terms of asset management, this is part of the study we did. It's in the report, volume 1. You look at the domains of asset management. They are listed there. You can see there's legislation and policy. There's Immovable Asset Register, which is now the tool we've been talking about. Asset management strategy. There's integration, capacity building, improvements, and performance monitoring. Now, when we look, and this is global, it's not just in terms of South Africa, you find that in terms of legislation and policy, we're pretty much doing well. We've got GIAMA, we've got guidelines on how to put together a user asset management plan. We've got also guidelines, from Treasury dealing with the minimum requirements, indicating that in terms of minimum requirements, this should be an asset register. So there we are pretty much covered in South Africa, especially if we're to compare with the rest of the developing world. We are pretty much covered. We are actually well advanced. Even in terms of having a register, we are actually fine. We do have a register. We, in fact, have multiple registers, so we are fine. Now you can see now the issues now come with integration. Those registers are not integrated. I remember colleagues were complaining that they have to capture manually. They'll go to the field, collect data on the condition of the building. There is no kind of what you call synchronization of any sort. Now, that information has to be relayed to someone, and they capture it manually. And, a lot of errors can happen. And also, it means that the information is also not real time. If we're to access the Akibas right now, what we see is not real time. It's not what was captured recently. That has to be done manually. So that's where we're failing. We go to asset management strategy. Well, there's progress in that because we've got user asset management plans, but also because of the asset prioritization strategy that was approved, I believe, towards the end of last year in Parliament. So there we are making some progress. Now, we still have challenges with your performance monitoring, capacity building, and with improvements there is actually referring to issues around refurbishments, maintenance of the assets, so on and so forth. So this is basically the asset management system or model that we're referring to, and this will also clearly share with you. It will apply to provinces, it will apply to municipalities. But again, to highlight that in terms of legislation, we're doing excellent. But on the other areas, that's where we actually need to do a lot of work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Nzimande.
No, thanks, Chair. I will be short. Now, the first part is that I thought we have passed the hurdle on the enforceability of the recommendation of the Commission. And because we have heard sharply from also Commissioner Dillon that that is no more an issue based on the recent judgment dealing with the legal effect of your recommendation. So that shouldn't be an issue that sounds like a challenge in our view. But secondly, what I wanted just to deal with is your role to really uphold the constitutional rights of the people, that whatever you deal with, whether it's about infrastructural matters in a form of ICT or whatever, look at the real needs as you are speaking about the needs, at the real needs for people who are not giving you a proper picture in terms of the statistics that you always account about, whether it's about grievances, whether it's about UD, ULP, or whatever matters that you deal with, because of inaccessibility of your offices. Looking at the rural areas in particular, people that have no access, internet, cafes, and all those things, who might have been, as a sanction, suspended as a sanction, who want also to access you, but because you are inaccessible, that matter does not get registered. That's one. Secondly, or if it's registered outside the timelines, and you know how cunning are departments. They will come from the angle to say, but what you are referring now, it's outside of our grievance procedure. As a result, therefore, it doesn't give the proper picture of the actual environment that people are dealing with. So what I'm trying to ask is whether you have done some environmental scanning in terms of the needs to be at least biased to those that were highly disadvantaged, not those that are having access like in semi-urban or urban areas, because that's where the concentration is, and that's where really people will also have resources to access this. But those that are really poor and very much disadvantaged has never been taken care of. I just want to check, as you are looking at this route, have you considered that? So that we are able to have a broader picture, also in terms of the people enjoying the rights that are there in the Constitution, equally so. You see, you can't speak equality when really, in actual practice, there's no equality that people are enjoying. The manner that we handle issues. That's one aspect. That's the next question. But the last question then, Chair, is in relation to, oh no, it will affect just the Department of Public Works. Really, I don't think it's important that I delve on that because, it will require them to have a right of reply on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Nzimande. Honourable Kahunda, would you like to continue?
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me also join colleagues to welcome the report by Prof. Commissioner and the team. It also talk on very important areas which require government to pay more attention to. I think there is a global phenomenon which reflects on the shrinking on levels of productivity in the public service, which is informed by many factors. Some of those factors relates to how we respond to issues of accessibility, as you have made mention of, but also how can we best link that with how do we rationalize the staffing that is already employed in the public sector. And looking at the numbers of employees, comparing that with levels of productivity, there's a big question that needs to be answered. Now, that brings me to the first issue that during COVID-19, some of us were introduced to these virtual meetings, were never exposed beside looking at these things in films. But we became practitioners when COVID-19 attacked us. Now, the question that I have we conducted a study which reflects, I recall this because I served in SALGA National Executive Committee. The team came to present a policy during COVID-19. That policy was suggesting that it's better that we sustain beyond COVID-19 that people work from home. And what are the implications of that? How do you enforce the levels of discipline, ethics, and professionalism whilst you are responding? Because we found that to be more economical than people traveling to meetings. Here in Parliament, we call departments to come before the select committees. But sometimes we venture into virtual meetings so that we can be economical in the exercise. So my question is, have we looked at this study so that when you compare the levels of availability of accommodation is also responding to that question? Then the second one is based on, especially in rural areas. In rural areas, the Department of Education is implementing a program called School Transformation Program. That School Transformation Program have conducted assessment of each and every schools located in rural areas, the numbers of learners and all of that, which has resulted to a process where most of the schools are now closed. Why they are closed down? Is because the numbers have shrunk in terms of attendance, because people have relocated where there are better services in towns. Now, taking advantage of that, is there any plan linking to the report that will suggest that those schools which are no longer utilized, they must be repurposed so that you guarantee the accessibility in rural communities of government services? So I think that's why I can stop, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Kaunda. Let's deal with those two sets of questions and then we can move on to Honourable Molokome.
No, thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. On the question of the enforceability, of the recommendations of the PSC, I mean, Honourable Nzimande, you are absolutely right that the expectation is that that is something that is supposed to be a thing of the past, largely as a result of the latest developments, and the pronouncement already made, also flowing, from a course of law that have pronounced on the work that flows from constitutional bodies. But I think that what is remaining is a question of that recognition insofar as the reality on the ground, from the side of the departments. What, for instance, from the side of the Public Service Commission, we have indicated is that when we present our reports, we do say to executive authorities that, by the way, the recommendations of the Public Service Commission, the expectation is that they are supposed to be implemented. But if executive authorities, for whatever reason, have a different view, they must then take them, through the review process. So they can't simply assume that we can just ignore them. So, but the problem that we are sitting with, as we are reviewing where we are currently, we discover that a large number, or percentage of these recommendations have not necessarily seen the light of day, largely as a result, again, of the fact that the Public Service Commission is thin on the ground. So when it comes to this work that is supposed to be pursued and so on and so forth, that, for instance, just to cite a simple example with provinces, because it's a painful kind of arrangement, by the way, that when, in terms of the new arrangement, flowing from the Public Service Commission Act of '97, and its establishment is concerned, was that there was this kind of a thumb-suck arrangement of how the provinces are supposed to be operating, so that there was this undertaking that said each province shall have a commissioner and a staff complement of 10. So that is why you'll find that in some instances they will be having the staff complement of 10. In some instances they will not even have such a staff complement. But now with also these resource constraints, that for whatever reason, if she steps down, then you can't also fill that position. So, which immediately then
creates another crisis. So that's a kind of reality that we are finding ourselves in, because of the problem that we are facing. So we are now banking on the new Public Service Commission bill, because we are saying that once enacted and giving that kind of latitude for the Public Service Commission, to operate now as an independent body with its own secretariat, that such decisions will not hinge on whether this is actually in alignment with how government is expecting, the following to be tackled and so on and so forth. So some of these things we are beginning to explore as a Public Service Commission. For instance, looking into the type of work that we are doing with professionalization getting underway, we've basically realized that in the government arrangement, we don't have such resources. And we've then begun to say that let's look for resources outside the state. So, for instance, with that fundraising arrangement, we've had the UNDP being prepared to invest such resources, to say, as we embark in this program, we are actually prepared to come and support you and so on. So we're working very hard to get that kind of a support. And we are saying that, but it will only give us freedom, once the Public Service Commission is operating on the basis of the new act. So, but similarly, the World Bank has given an indication that their interest is largely, on supporting municipalities when it comes to municipal CFOs. So those are kinds of arrangements that are currently underway, but they are working in that instance from the World Bank directly with the National Treasury, to come on board to provide that kind of support. What the understanding was, if we can get that right, and they understand these kinds of finances and so on, we'll stand a better chance to be in a position to say, in municipalities, there is that kind of conviction that when they are dealing with these matters, CFOs will provide the necessary support in those areas and so on. But that challenge is there. There is another element that we've introduced, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, to say that in instances where we want to see action, we then have decided to move away from recommendations and said, we then shall issue directions. And directions, we say, they can't be contested. So we've seen one of the cases, for instance, that has happened recently, where we issued directions, and the MEC, or rather the minister in this instance, was reluctant to go ahead, with those directions. And we said, okay, of course, you must remember that, by the way, if you don't go ahead, then let's have something in writing that says you are taking this process on a review. And we suddenly discovered that then the minister actually changed, tune to say, oh, no, actually that direction is going to be implemented. In one of the provinces, what has happened is that there was a contestation on the directions, and we said, please go ahead and take it on review. And they've done that. Now the process that is currently unfolding is seemingly, from the perspective of the MAC, going to be hitting hard on the state, because we're very clear to say you must be very, very reluctant to use the resources of the state to defend something that you're going to lose at the end of the day, because we've given you this evidence that says that we've done this homework. So if you take us on, you are going to lose in the process. But we are reluctant that you'll be using the resources of the state in doing so. So what is happening currently is that in that instance, now they want to backtrack. But the process is already underway because they took us to court. So the court proceedings are already unfolding. Now they can no longer backtrack because it's already underway. But the problem, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, is that these are matters, as we always say, that they must understand as we present them, to say that they must be very careful about the course of action that they are taking, because at the end of the day, it will come back, to hit them terribly. On the question of rural areas, because you're absolutely right, the problem is they don't have the necessary resources. What we had introduced as a Public Service Commission to address that problem was what we refer to, as our own citizens' forums. In terms of these citizens' forums, what we will do is to identify per province one of these most remote places, deep rural settings and so on, because we'll be looking into what it means for the communities to get such services, and will then say that is where we shall go. But what we then do, which is fairly interesting when we're communicating it to your good selves, as Parliament, was that we don't simply just go there and say we are here to do a citizens forum. We first go and do our own research, find out what the real issues are. That is why in many settings we've discovered that such communities do not have the resources even of traveling to the nearby town. Because it means traveling to the nearby town will mean that a person will have to leave home at about 4 or 5 in the morning. They'll be traveling for the next 3 or 4 hours, getting to the nearest town. Now, we are then saying that if they get to such towns, they give us information that says, having queued in the Home Affairs office, before I could be served, it was the end of the day, and the office has to be closed. I have to then get transport back home. What amount have you parted with? Communities tell us that to get to town, you must have 300 rands. Now, they don't even have that. You have to borrow in order to do that. Now, they say, but how then do you get a service? They say, no, it means that I have to wait for the next 6 months so that I can raise that and go back to town. Now, we then say, this is a community that deserves us coming there. Now, with that information now at our back pocket, we then go to the relevant departments to say, Home Affairs, SAPS, and all these government departments, SASA and what have you, we are going to be doing the Citizens Forum so months down the line. We want all of you to come with us. There are these issues in our communities and so on, but bring the services along with you. Mobile services so that you can then come as we meet communities, you provide services to them. And the interesting thing is that government was saying that, but this model is actually excellent. How did you come up with this arrangement? We said, no, it's not because we thought about it. It's because we had communities saying these are the issues. And then we said, in order to address these issues, let's come to communities to say we are here to answer your questions. But at the same time, as we answer your questions, we've got all these departments that we've already identified as your challenges. And they get services. I mean, they get their birth certificates issued there and then, IDs issued there and then, and so on. And when we leave such community, they say, we are so happy that the Public Service Commission has been here. And we've done that across the country, Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Members. We can make such reports available. But now, here's the snag. The crisis of finances has now, in a way, strangled us not to continue with that program. Simply because we don't have the kinds of resources. Because we were saying, if you go to such communities, we also have to arrange for transport, for people to be taken from different villages to be brought wherever we are going to be, because we put up, a tent there and so on and so forth. Because communities can't be there. They can't actually travel so many X number of kilometers to get there. We have to bring them there. We have to transport them back. It's such a logistical nightmare. So we've been doing all those things with the resources at our disposal that we had. So, but currently we have said, let's park that for now. But there's one that we are going to be actually just seeing through, because we had promised the communities, in the rural settings in the Western Cape that shall happen. So that's the only one that is going to be happening now, together with the one that we've already done in Limpopo of report backs. But what we did was to go initially, deal with whatever issue that have been presented and so on, and answering questions and so on, but then say to the communities, with all the other issues that we've raised, we shall return in a year's time, so that we can come back and report what had happened. In some communities, what has happened is that, let's say, SAPS have realized that the crisis of crime is simply because communities don't have access to such facilities. Some communities, as a result of the Citizens Forum, have actually now succeeded to get a mobile SAPS facility in such a community that comes just to provide that particular service at particular points and so on. Now, we're saying that these are things that begin to at least be interventions, that take communities, forward in some way. So these are kinds of processes that we've put in place. And then, Honourable Kaunda, you've mentioned the question of the challenges, around productivity levels that are consistently shrinking, which is a fact, but it's associated also with the resources, that are allocated, to these particular programs and so on. So the reality is what then do we do in order to at least address such a problem in a manner that will be effective, for communities? The program that you've rightly mentioned on education, on the question of school transformation and so on, we've gone to a number of these rural areas and discovered schools with proper structures that have been shut down, and nothing is happening in those areas. Now, we are saying that this is actually where, as government, there must be the thinking that says, how do we use these facilities for the sake of communities? But of course, that one is even far-fetched, because we have not used facilities, as we mentioned earlier, that we already had so many moons ago that are also falling apart, like those teacher training colleges and so on and so forth, that are already falling apart. Some of them that we inherited, from former structures like self-governing states and so on, where communities actually take us to say, do you know that this building actually belongs to a government? Now, before we can even talk, what are you going to do about it? We say, but why are you so interested in it? They say, because it's been invaded. The fellows that have taken over don't even know who they are, but they're renting out the facility and so on. Now, you ask the ones who are renting to say, but why are you doing it? They say, we're so desperate. We don't have anywhere to sleep. Do you know who's renting the facility to you? They say, we do not know either. But how do you pay? No, they have their own agents who come and get this. And it's such a confusing arrangement, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. But these are things that we are picking up as we do this kind of work. So there are so many complications, but it requires a kind of highly sophisticated strategy of beginning to say, where we are currently, how do we begin to address these problems? Because they are not going to go away on their own. So that's a kind of reality that is facing us at this day and age. But when we touch this area of DPWI, you suddenly realize that you're actually touching the entire government, but in a very awkward fashion, because they themselves are put in a very awkward situation by the manner in which we have begun to drive the process ourselves. So in a sense, we've sold out on them. Our expectations are actually not in line with what they're supposed to be doing. So that is why the rethinking is something that we really need to put in place in a complete sense of the word. So that is why we are saying that as we engage in this particular manner, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, from our side, because we have this research, that we've been doing in many of these aspects, that we will obviously be asking Honorable Chair and Honorable Members that please, whenever there is a specific matter that you want us to once again provide to your good selves, even if we simply just pass it on and so on, and we want an explanation, we can do that, virtually and so on. We are keen to do that because we are saying that this is actually what needs to be there at your disposal in order for yourselves, to feel comfortable with the work that you are supposed to be doing, because your role is to hold, our executive authorities accountable. So there is no two ways about it, but you can only do so because there is information at your disposal. And in our case, we do churn out these kinds of reports and so on, and we want to share them with yourselves, because I've discovered that the reports can be so meaningless if they are sitting there, without anyone actually giving meaning to them. So that is why these kinds of interactions would be fairly critical. Thank you so much, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members.
Thank you very much for that. I think it's so how did we get here over the last 5 years, and what should we be doing in the opposite direction from now on? Thank you very much. Honorable Molokami.
Thank you, Chair, and greetings again. Chair, I'll go straight to, because some of the questions my colleagues has covered me. I'll just go straight to page 12 on the findings by the AG. And the repeated findings that the department is unable to, or the commission is unable to deal with that. Chair, we had met with the AG in other committee, and also the issue of the departments not being able to deal with the findings itself. So my question is, what are those findings? Because it seems as if they repeat themselves and the department is unable to deal with such. The second issue is about the consultants, It seems as if you are using the consultants, and this is also happening in other departments and also municipalities that we have. And my question is that the use of the consultants, are they helping you to deal with the findings that the AG is raising? Because, Chair, I've picked that the commission itself, if you can listen to their presentation, it's really worrisome. And I'm picking a point that it seems as if there's the department is not coming to the board to deal with the issues and the recommendations that the commission is presenting to us. So I just want to check whether you have issues, or how often do you meet with the department itself to deal with these matters that you have been raising. Chair, the issue of the outreach programs, of which the indication is the challenge about the budget for them to have the outreach program that you have indicated. Do you, when you conduct this the outreach programs, do you liaise with municipalities in those provinces? Because I know that if ever there's a communication between the three spheres of government, obviously you'll find that the municipalities has their own imbizos, and you can be invited to such, so that you reduce even the issue of the logistics that you have to do when you are going to those provinces. So the communication between especially the local sphere, when they have such programs, you can be invited so that you provide the information to citizens, because we know what honorable members has raised about you being known. How do the communities itself reach you so that they can raise those issues and so forth. The properties, Chair, you know, government properties, especially in the public works, even the issue of accommodation itself is a bit of a challenge, because we still have lots of properties that are invaded or not in good condition. Especially some of the buildings are the structures are asbestos structures, and we are expecting the deployees to go and live there, and also to provide services when they don't even live in a conducive environment itself. So I think the issues that you have raised, Chair, we need to get the report, the full report, and maybe the commission should also indicate to the committee what is it that you want us to help you with, so that when we meet with these departments, they are able we are able to raise those issues, because even the committee, we do the oversight. Maybe when we do our oversight visit, we need to visit some of these government properties so that we know the condition, and when we recommend. I see, Chair, you are indicating the issue of time. Last question. I know that you are used that I'm not, usually I don't ask many questions, because I speak last.
It's not that. I just know how long Honourable Keza normally takes.
So today is my turn, because at least I'm not the last one to ask questions. Lastly, I think it's on page 12. The issue of, let me just go there quickly. It's my last question, Chair. No, it's not 12. The issue of equity, I'm not sure about that page here. Is page 19. The issue of equity in terms of your targets. I'm worried. I was just checking at your structure also as the commission. I'm only seeing 3 or 4. I know that it might not be in your capacity to deal with it. 3 or 4 females in that structure. most is males, and we are talking about the issue of equity and youth and disability. So we need to check into that issues, because if we want to balance, we need to look into that aspect when we come up with these commissions, the structures and so forth. Maybe next time, I don't know when the commission was I put, maybe when the new commission comes chair, we'll have more females and also people with disability, and so that we have everyone accommodated when we are in this. Thanks, Chair. I was just fast because you are...
Thank you for the half an hour, Honourable Molokome. Honourable Peter, let's see if you can beat that time, if you don't mind, and then we can go over to answers. Thanks very much. I still want to give a chance to Honourable Kleza, Honourable Makasini, and I'd also like to ask a question. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chair. You know me, I won't be long, Chair. But I can see the Commission is wearing a blanket of pieces of stones. The manner in which you are struggling, I can see through your face. That is not easy what you are doing. But let me go straight to my question. My first question is, can your department inform this select committee about its achievement since its inception? Number two, what obstructs your department not to achieve some of its work? Why is it so difficult for this commission to render its services to rural areas, if there is any? Or does your department work under pressure due to ministers who come and go through lack of accountability? Let's go to slide 12. A utilization of consultants, you using appropriated funds. Based on your findings, does your department administration also run by consultants? If yes, what is your role in the department? Lastly, Chair, who monitor or inspect your work based on your user management plan? Does it include system of managing all your assets via manually or app? How do you run your assets? I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Peter. Over to you. You're welcome to answer those.
No, thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. I'll ask Ms. Domingo Swartz to answer.
Chairperson, just through you, honourable members, the slides in terms of the achievement against the constitutional values and principles does not reflect the Public Service Commission. It is the data for the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. So we are presenting their performance against the constitutional values and principles. So it's not that we don't have females. We do have a lot of females, honourable member, at the Public Service Commission. If you even look at our deputy chairperson is also a female. So it's not just females at lower level, but also females within the ranks of the commission. We've got 3 DDG posts in the commission, and of those 3, 2 are females. We have 3 branches, and each of those branches have got 2 chief directors, which is basically then 6, and of those 6, I do believe 4 of those chief directors are females. So the picture for the commission is totally different from the information as provided. Honourable Chair, just through you, I just want to indicate that since the PAC started with this functional accommodation program, we have been working, so it's for the last 4 years. We had 3 different ministers that we had to work with. So in terms of the enforceability, it's not so much that people are so hard resistant, but it's the musical chairs. It's the fact that we get the buy-in from a minister, and as soon as that minister knows 100% what is required, unfortunately it changes. So in the last 4 years of trying to implement or facilitate the implementation of these recommendations, we had 4 ministers. So our commissioner has taken a hands-on approach, as he has indicated, of making sure that we have regular particular engagements. I just want to indicate also that we do have a report on the support mechanisms that were put in place during COVID and the impact it had on service delivery, so we can definitely share that report as well, including the report on the ICT study to really understand the infrastructure and the impact that ICT has got on the on service delivery. Again, and I think just in terms of the AG repeat findings, Honourable Member, it is specifically in terms of compliance with legislation. The challenge with DPWI, it seems like their focus is on reporting the information and not necessarily following the guidelines. So the guidelines is specific in terms of the type of information that should be in the annual report, and I think it's a question of just ticking off. I've reported on that. Whether it complies with the full requirements doesn't matter as long as the information is available. And in terms of the frequency of the engagements with the department, what we've also done, all the inspections, as Mr. Litwala has indicated, we make sure that the representatives of DPWI go with us wherever we go. I don't know if Honourable Members, Honourable Chair is aware of the fact that we also have been asked by the Portfolio Committee on Communication and Digital Technology with the Minister to launch an investigation into CETA. So in terms of how CETA is providing the ICT infrastructure. So we are also in a position, or we would appreciate it if the committee should be going out on an oversight visit. If you want us to come with you to a previous site that we've been at, we can then share with you, but this is exactly what we found. If they say there were improvements, you have us there to show that this is not the case, because this is what we definitely found. Our colleagues have been going with the client departments, the DPWI representatives, and it's a question of nobody can run away, because if you want to blame me, I'm at the table. If I want to blame you, you at the table. So there is representativity of all the role players, and we can hold each other basically accountable. I think Commissioner has indicated, Honourable Member, it is actually, it costs about 500K to undertake a citizens forum, because we really try and go to the furthest outskirts of a province. We were in the in the Northern Cape, and we were actually close to which border, Commissioner?
To the border of Namibia.
Namibia. That's how far we went out, and we made sure that we take all the relevant services to the people. And Honourable Chair, you know, when you are inviting the community members, some of those people haven't even eaten for 3 days. So obviously we try and make sure that the people get full food on the day. We share the food with schools and whatever infrastructure is available for us to share. We do work very closely with the Office of the Premier, making sure that every single department in the province is involved in one way or the other. We even try to use some of their vehicles, Honourable Member, so that we can try and cut costs. The sad thing that we experience is when it comes to the catering services, we try to make sure that we use the caterers within the community. And now we need to negotiate with people that are already struggling to cut. So that's the saddest thing, because we're trying to support woman-owned companies or catering services, and so to fight and negotiate for basic services so that we can save money is also defeating the purpose. So I think that is very important that we highlight that. And yeah, I think we've answered all the other questions. And then, again, Honourable Member, I think the main thing in terms of the monitoring that the PAC needs to do is we need to hold everybody accountable. And if we can work together to ensure that whoever comes and presents to this select committee if we can share with you any relevant information, as Commissioner has said, we will do so that you have evidence that you can use to engage with that role player. I thank you.
Okay, Honorable Chairperson, just Mr. Tswalo to cover that.
I think, through you, Honourable Chair, that Ms. Domingos has almost covered everything, but there was an interesting question about our own user asset management plan, if we've got that in place. Look, that's something we need to look into because we are currently using a leased building. So again, that's one thing we did not mention. There's different asset register for leased buildings. So leased buildings, as you know, the owner is responsible for the maintenance, so that wouldn't have a user asset management plan. But we are looking into that in terms of the state properties where you find that a department is renting a building from a private organization like we are doing. And also I'm aware there's current negotiations in terms of devolving, in terms of acquiring our own official accommodation as well. So just to touch on that. Thanks.
Yes, and then Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Members, on that question of the support from municipalities, that we do have that direct, engagement with them. In many instances, they have actually assisted in supporting communities, in order to cover, the Public Service Commission. So we don't simply just rock up and we find that nobody knows about our presence and so on, because we feel that that is irresponsible. Even chiefs, in instances where we have traditional leaders, we go and report formally before we can even do the work and so on, so that we don't simply just come over and take off again without them having had that kind of recognition and so on. So we take that part very seriously. And then, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members, on the question of equity, from the side of the Commission itself, because the Public Service Commission, in terms of the staffing, OPSC, as she's indicated, we are excellent in that area. Actually, predominantly, the leadership is in the hands of females. But when it comes to the Commission itself, it was an interesting one, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members, because we are actually helpless in that situation because we don't appoint commissioners. Commissioners are appointed by the National Assembly. So the interesting thing is that we always mention that, by the way, this is the challenge. But of course, we are not part of that. So commissioners are delivered by the National Assembly. So we can't contest that because we don't have that authority. So I think that's a dicey one, so that's why we need to report in that kind of manner, Honourable Chair. And then, Honourable Peter, I know that you were worried about whether we do use consultants. Unfortunately, we don't. we use our own resources, even if we are thin on the ground, but we consistently do the work ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Honourable Makasini.
Thanks, Chairperson.
You've only got time for the one question, sorry.
Okay.
I'm teasing.
Yeah, the chairperson. Thank you, Chair. I just want to check. When they were presenting, I just observed the challenge of the policy gap, of legislative gap, that we need to assist them so that they can empower the Commission. Because if we will have a DG and HODs refusing to come and there's nothing that we can do, it's also upon ourselves as a select committee that we must make laws that assist the Commission. Then another issue, the issue of the former, like in Tabantra, in Free State, we used to have beautiful buildings, but if you can go to Tabantra, Naledisan and whatever, and General, all those buildings are now in the area where the thugs are doing whatever that they want. You can go to Kwakwa, you find the same thing. You can go to Butabelo, it's the same thing. What mechanism, as much as I agree with Honourable Count and the chairperson, the commissioner, when he was presenting the issue of the homelands, we do have this building that are beautiful in the Free State, in those 3 towns areas that I highlighted, and all those buildings now, for example, in Kwakwa, there's a boarding school, the Rasta community now are using for renting for the people. They are owning that building. It's the building of the department. We have an asset of all those homeland areas with those buildings so that you can integrate them in your community. I understand you say there's a challenge of the capacity, you do manual. What another means that we can use the department to make sure they do audit all these building in their respective provinces and submit to the province, so that you own up, you know what is as much as we are doing with your own resources, the little resources, but the public works, they must come to hand also to account about their the building in their respective municipality. Yesterday I was in Kudud. One of the people was showing me the house where now the people are using the beautiful house of the public works is not in use, is in town. There are people of the clinic. When you go to Kudu clinic, people who queue for the longest time, while next to the Kudu clinic, we can use that house to help maybe other people with the pharmacy to distribute the medicine. So what are you doing that to make sure, as much as they will face their other building, that we can face it out, but they are building that we can still use at the department, if maybe they can give you a report, so that these things are being known. People in every province, they can report about the building that we are using. The issue of the 13% on the administrative, what is the challenge of the department to appoint on the issue of administrative? Because surely it can't be more than 2 years. They've identified the problems, but the problem is they are still sitting at 13%, but we have a challenge. So when they report to you, what is their response on issue to overcome the challenge of 13% on the issue? The issue of the last issue of the Honorable Peter, what was raising of the consultant that has been used by the department, I think the money that are spending is too much. Till today, maybe the coming report that is classified for now as the one that we are going to present, maybe you will get a report that will assist us. How are they planning to face out the issue of the consultant? Because we cannot continue to use the consultants while we have people that have been appointed in the department and they are not doing anything. So maybe that report will assist. If it's not assisting, what mechanism that we have put in place to make sure they face out the issue of the consultants? Thank you.
You just took my question. Thank you, Honourable Makasini. Honourable Teza.
No, progressive questioning from the Commissar. You know, Chair, perhaps I'm looking at the nice thing, the very good thing about speaking last is to observe, you know, throughout and see what exactly can we do as honourable members in terms of the legislative gaps that are relating to the challenges that are plaguing the PSC. I think perhaps we would have to look at the Public Service Commission Act, Chair, to give, in light of the observations that I've had from the submissions by members, to give the PSC binding powers to enforce, because I was looking at their mandate. There's nothing that speaks about enforcement, and or even escalating the cases to the public protect, you know, to ensure that there's some level of consequences that are given to enforce implementation of these recommendations and to refer serious cases, and then to impose timelines in terms of ensuring that the departments comply. So we were in Tabazimbi, Chair, on oversight. The situation was deplorable. You wouldn't sit like that, meaning that in the meeting you will be sitting precariously because of the, I don't know whether it's unwillingness to use the budget of the state to actually ensure that the assets are renewed, you know, within the councils, that they are renewed, because we're sitting there. The first oversight that we did is how we were sitting, you know, trying not to fall from those chairs. And the stench that was going on within the Met, showing that it's an old mat, you know, and there's no maintenance and no cleaning, and therefore people can't generate healthy, you know, submissions as councillors to actually transform that situation because of the environment in which they find themselves in. the same environment that's outside in terms of the stench that you find within the sanitation you'd find inside the council, and therefore there can't be healthy engagements or productive ideas that come in council to actually be adopted and be implemented. And therefore I wondered, Chair, whether there is, in terms of perhaps there is steps that are geared towards the expansion of the PSC's authority and footprint to hold municipalities and SOEs under the same constitutional values to give rise to those assets, to ensure that they are quite healthy. The second question, Chair, if I go straight directly to it, how many recommendations issued by you as the PSC between 2020 and 2024 remain unimplemented? Is there perhaps a public available compliance dashboard showing which departments fail to implement your findings, so that the public is quite aware of what is happening, and also there's available metrics in terms of reporting and availing those reports in public. And the second to last, Chair, will relate to the issue of the triple Ps projects. When you talked about it, I just saw a normalization of extortion. Immediately when you spoke to it, I just said, no man, there can't be people who are holding the state at ransom. There has to be a dispensation of legislation that is binding towards those contractors to actually hand over everything to the state, because they were given a contract, right? And to what extent have you developed yourself to see these gaps that are happening of not handing over the intellectual property to the state? Have you identified to ensure that we close that gap in terms of ensuring that there's enforcement with timelines and binding enforcement to ensure that, because otherwise it's normalization. We just report it and say, these people, they don't give us, and there's no one who's following up. The last question, Chair, relates to the funding model. Can you link the capacity the capacity needed for the PSC to, in light of the austerity environment that we have now, can you link the capacity needed by you in light of the staff that you have told us, the number of staff across the country, to the environment in which budgets are the order of the day, budget cuts are the order of the day, and therefore will adversely affect the PSC in terms of its constitutional mandate? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Makasini. Honourable Keza, I think for the sake of brevity, I just have one question. Chair, you alluded to this. Professor, you alluded to this, is that there's this devolution of funding for maintenance to departments, but the maintenance still rests with the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, the actual maintenance of the properties. So how do we address that disconnect? How do we fix it? Is there a way of aligning it so that both the maintenance funding and the responsibility of maintenance lies then with Public Works and Infrastructure, or do you devolve it totally so that the maintenance and the funding lies at the user department? So, or is there an answer in between? Thank you very much. And then you're welcome to, Professor, if you want to do your concluding remarks at the end of the answering of these questions, and then we'll continue the rest of the meeting. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. So in order then to be aligned with your proposal, let me request the colleagues, Ms. Domingo Swartz, together with Mr. Tswala, to deal with the answers quickly, and then I'll then deal with the last part so that we can then be freeing ourselves then, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members. Just in terms of the policy gap, Honourable Members, in terms of where we would need assistance, I think the main finding in terms of the GIAMA is the whole review and amendment that is required. As Mr. Lutwalo indicated, we always say that our policies and our frameworks are on point. But the reality is they're on point in paper, but they're not on point as far as practical implementation is concerned. So technically, are they really as good as they should be? We tend to take a lot of guidance from developed country models and panel beating ourselves into a model that was not even meant for our country. So we need to look at developing countries, what developing countries are doing and how they've done these types of things. We don't, first of all, have the same money like some of these countries, and we are made of different stock. So I think it's very important that we really start looking at the type of models that we adopt as a country, and instead of panel beating the model to fit us, we want to panel beat ourselves to fit the model. So I think that is very important that we need to address. So in terms of GIAMA, we need to include enforceable compliance provisions and penalties. The reality is, even with financial misconduct, there has been a lot of pronouncements made in terms of the consequences for financial misconduct, but show us a case where it was actually done. The President has clearly indicated what should happen. We as Public Service Commission have also got certain guidelines in terms of what needs to happen, but show us one department that stands up and actually makes sure that there's consequences for financial misconduct. We really need to make sure that as a country, we take back our country by holding people accountable. Mandate maintenance plan into lease contracts. Our contract management as a state is very poor, Honourable Members, Honourable Chair. We really need to make sure, and in some departments, there's clear guidelines from National Treasury. So they can be, our departments need to make sure that there is compulsory training of all officials responsible for contract management. And I think it's definitely something that this committee can enforce. We need to make sure that every single person that works in finance has got training on what needs to be in a contract and knows how to manage those contracts. And then also institutionalize independent audits of immovable asset data. And I think there, again, this committee can play a very, very big role in terms of doing unannounced inspections at some of these sites. Because the reality, Honourable Members and Honourable Chair, is that some of these sites actually prepare for you. Okay, there's things that they can't change, but there are some stuff that they artificially put in place. And when you leave, those things leave with it as well. We had some of the facility managers that told us to our face, if I knew you were coming, I would have been off sick. Yeah. So that's the reality that we need to deal with. I think also, Honourable Member, in terms of getting input from the clients, DPW recently did a survey with all client departments. I think it's very important that the findings of that survey is presented to this committee. They need to come and present what is the findings and also what are the mitigating plans in place to deal with any risks, any challenges as it relates to the survey, with clear deadlines, clear allocation of funds to make sure that it actually happens. I think that is vital for us to make any progress, because if they are going to use this survey as a Bermuda Triangle where people have shared their experiences, has shared their concerns, has also shared recommendations in terms of suggesting how do we address these challenges, the next time they do a similar survey, nobody's going to put the effort in to provide the required data. So I think with the new minister in place, with the new administration, let's use the data. Let's use the experiences and as most of the members have indicated, address the needs of the clients, but also address the needs of DPWI. I think it's very important that we enable them to do their work better. So DPWI should present to the committee also a detailed report on the use of consultants. We can't give you all the details exactly in terms of what they've used these consultants for. And our suggestion is that let them present, these are the consultants that we are using, these are the areas against the establishment. So they must present their establishment and say, this is the gap that we have in terms of skills, and therefore we have appointed consultants. Because the reality is that in corporate services, for example, I'm not saying this is necessarily now for DPWI, because we don't have the detail of who they exactly used, what they exactly used these consultants for. You have a DDG responsible for strategy management and performance monitoring and reporting, but then you have a consultant coming in developing the strategic plan for the department. So what is that DDG doing? And we all know what a DDG in government gets. So you take that money, including what we need to pay a consultant for, and most of the time, that strategic plan is copied and pasted from other good practice strategic plans. So we need to be very vigilant with the usage of consultants and what they deliver. But the question is, do we have the right people asking the right type of questions within our department? I think then also in terms of the triple Ps, there is an office of the Chief Procurement Officer at National Treasury. I think it's very important that they maybe also come to this committee as a suggestion or proposal and present what are the key things that needs to be in a triple P model contract, so that the committee is aware of it, and when DPWI comes and report on their performance, the committee is in a position to ask the right type of questions and hold them accountable as far as contract management is concerned, and also in terms of the triple P contracts that we have in place, so that we are proactive also. We know that, as Mr. Lutwalo has indicated, there are some of the triple Ps that is a contract for 5 years, and when it's time for that to expire, for that building to then belong to the state, nobody remembers that it's time. So a simple alerting system that to say, this financial year, we know what's going to happen in the next 2 financial years is very, it's very important. In terms of the funding model for the PAC, we have looked at, as Mr. Lutwalo also said, we know that there's a lot of public service commissions across the country, across the globe, and we've looked at their models. We are very unique in terms of the type of work that we do, in terms of our mandate. Most of the commissions only deal with HR-related stuff. We do not only deal with HR-related stuff. We are much, much broader. We have looked at the AG establishment, and we all know that there's not one department, not one agency, not one entity that does not require the service of the AG. And that's the same with the Public Service Commission. We need to make sure that as government, we make sure that the Public Service Commission has got the same capacity like the AG to do their work more effectively and to cover national, provincial, local, and entities. And as honorable members knows, you have national departments, provincial departments that have got entities under them as well. So it is a mammoth task. Our chairperson always says, Never again will a commission like the Zondo Commission ask, where was the PAC?
Chairperson, Mr. Latswalo, quickly.
Just to add a few things, maybe for you also, Member Cassini, and I think it also responds to what Honorable Gaunda has said. I think both as the committee and the PSC, we need to take advantage of the new developments within the DPWI. As mentioned earlier, there's an asset optimization strategy that was actually approved towards the end of last year. We need to thoroughly engage with the optimization strategy. What does it entail? We know that we are a developmental state. Can we afford to, dispose of all facilities like you mentioned in Kwakwa? Can we afford to do that? Or can that be a facility that is focused on providing social services, as an example, which is not really meant to derive any kind of profit? So we need to really engage with the optimization strategy. I'm aware, and they mentioned last week that they've just appointed also a steering committee for the asset optimization strategy. So we need to look into that. Well, I think through you, Commissioner, will actively engage with the DPW on that and see how we can contribute to that as well in terms of, like you said, in terms of the former homelands. Another thing to highlight that Domingos has also mentioned is the issue of devolution as well. One thing, Commissioner, we need to look into, I think we should also be honest and indicate that facilities that have devolved 100%, like some of the police stations and even the magistrate courts, there are those that have got a ceiling of about $1 million in terms of addressing their own maintenance. They are actually doing very well. Most of them that we've looked at, they're actually doing very well because they've devolved 100%. However, the gray area, Honorable Chair, I think you also mentioned, that we need to address is that in the review of the legislation, we need to look at some kind of monitoring mechanism. Even when a department is devolved 100%, what is then the role of DPWI? Because legally, in terms of legislation, they are still the custodian. If anything goes wrong, they are still responsible. So in terms of review of policy, we need to look at that, a monitoring mechanism that is suitable for South Africa, that is suitable for the kind of devolution, and not just devolution, there's also an issue of delegations where you find that a particular end user department is entirely responsible for their electricity. We need to look at that. I remember when we were at one of the facilities, there were issues where the client actually did not even, do some of they were actually they were refurbishing bathrooms. They did not actually use the correct paint. And DPW was actually shocked that this is not the correct paint that should have used. And they've developed to do that, they are allowed to do that, but they're actually not doing it correctly, and it's actually affecting the structural integrity of the building itself. So we need to look at some of those things. In terms of a dashboard, I think that's one of the things we've also communicated. Now I'm talking in terms of the DPWI. I know you were mentioning in terms of the PSC, but also in the terms of the DPWI, we have communicated with them that in terms of the asset register, there has to be a dashboard that shows the management of properties from year to year, that shows the trends in terms of even your illegally occupied buildings, that shows even the buildings that have now been retaken by the state. We are aware also through the GISKIT meeting that took place, I think about 2 weeks ago, that through the asset prioritizing strategy, DPW has been signing some MOUs with municipalities. So that's another thing we need to look at, the MOUs and what are the contents of the MOUs, because that will deal directly with your illegally occupied buildings as well. And lastly, to mention as well, which we've also observed through our inspections. Now, the issue with residential accommodation is that it's mostly entirely under the client, not DPWI, although DPWI still remains the custodian. So often when a tenant is moving out, say an official of the SAPS is moving out of the house, they have to inform DPWI that this particular tenant has moved out, but that is not happening as it's supposed to happen. You find that a tenant moves out and somebody takes over, or even it can even be illegally occupied. There was a situation, I think, in Mpumalanga that we actually were told of where an official moved, but somebody else took over the property and is being vandalized at the moment. So there are those loopholes and lack of enforcement, as Mr. Milkoswat was saying, that we actually need to look into that. Even client departments have to play their role. They've got to play their role of accounting to PWI. If an official moves out of a residential accommodation, that ought to be reported and the right procedures need to be followed. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
No, thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson, honourable members. Just in closing, to say that we really appreciate this opportunity because, as Honourable has indicated, that the question of the Public Service Commission bill, that at the point when it gets enacted, that this committee will have to look into whether it will be in a position to address these kinds of issues because, in a sense, they are providing a weakness that we cannot afford, to continue with. But secondly, the whole notion of trying to understand, what is it that the Public Service Commission can put out there to say this is where we have succeeded and this is where we have not, that we can actually provide such information because we appreciated it. I mean, as indicated, that much as I'm serving in the national office, there was a request that I should support Northwest, and now that they have not had a commissioner for the last 2.5 years, that they asked a very interesting question to say, can you answer this question? Said, by all means, but the problem is the bulk of what we've recommended has not been implemented. So they said, can you just provide us with a report for the last 5 years? And we went ahead and prepared such a report. So which means that even in this instance, we can do precisely that, so that it's not a question of us saying this and there's a question mark from the side of the honourable members. But we provide a report that says that insofar as what we've done over the last cycle of 5 years, this is what has been implemented, but this is what has not been implemented. Because the reality is that in areas where the recommendations of the PSC have not been recommended, or rather implemented, we do sit with a problem, that we need to own up to. I mean, everybody was surprised when we gave an indication about the Tembisa Hospital, that, by the way, the Public Service Commission had provided the recommendations about issues about that hospital, of these sharks that were actually, doing all these kinds of funny things and so on. But the recommendations were not implemented. So when that incident, of the whistleblower, was killed, we said, if at all these recommendations had been implemented, this could have been prevented. And everybody was surprised to say, but where was this report? But the report was with the Department of Health. So these are kinds of issues that we need to provide, to your good selves, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, so that at least there is an understanding about what it is that we are talking about and where these kinds of shortcomings that we are talking about are. But on the question of the of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, if from the side of the committee, you can begin looking into whether the current model is advisable, because they themselves are confessing that it's not helping us because we are the ones who are paying the price. But departments are running amok, with whatever they are doing on their own, so that there can be a clearly defined arrangement that says that if there are delegations, you also take over the following responsibility. But if none, then let the budget reside with the department that is expected to provide maintenance so that you can know who do you hold accountable. Because currently it becomes virtually difficult. So you run to this department, they say, no, but it's DPWI. But for a fact, DPWI doesn't have that responsibility. So these are things that we're picking up, as we interact with them, on the ground, as it were. So these are kinds of issues that we'll also like to bring to your attention, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members. Thank you so much.
Professor, thank you so much to you and to Mr. Mingo Schwartz and to Mr. Letsoalo. Thank you so much for your participation today. I think the request from the Minister and the Presidency that we postpone today's meeting to another date because they couldn't make it, I'm doing this with that request because this was such an important meeting to have with us today, and I think it was riveting. And the way that you engaged with us, either I'm becoming used to parliamentary speak or you are very straightforward and clear, but I think the latter is more applicable here. Thank you very much for the forthright and clear way that you engaged with us today. It's much appreciated and it was much needed, and I think you've given us as a committee a lot of tools to take forward in our oversight role. And we thank you for that. We're just going to quickly, if you don't mind, while you're packing up your stuff, do a bit of homework, and then we'll put it into the meeting. Honourable members, we have the minutes of the meeting of the 23rd of July. They were circulated to you. The minutes are in front of us. Are there any corrections, additions, alterations on those minutes, specifically with regards to attendance? If there's nothing, can I have a proposer for those minutes? Thank you, Honourable Skeerkogel. A seconder. Thank you, Honourable Peter. Those minutes are duly adopted. Honourable members, I wish you strength for today and for tomorrow. And then thank you very much for this term. This will be the last time that we meet as a committee for this term. Enjoy your, I hope you do get a little bit of a break between the constituency work. And we look forward to seeing you in the next term. Thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair. I hope the Commission remembered all the reports they have to send to us.